I am just outside the booth, actually, right now. We'll be headed that way.
Verizon Indycar Series on Indycar Radio.
And history is matched as the twin checkered flags come out for our second four-time winner of the Indianapolis 500, Al Unser. Roberto Guerrero comes across the line, finishing 4.4 seconds back. The Penske team scores another victory. Al Unser has won the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
A.J. Foyt now coming down to the white line in turn number 2. He looks kind of happy as he goes through 2 onto the backstretch, and in just a second he'll be up to Chuck Marlowe on his final lap.
Roger, howdy, and he has the backstretch all to himself. Here he comes, A.J. Foyt, number 1, entering up toward that northeast turn. The big wave to all the fans. He's in the northeast, and Mikey Hurt.
We got him here. People waving their hands, waving to him, and he waves back as he takes the turn number 3. One more turn to go to Jim Shelton.
And he's in this turn right now, Mike. White car, big goal number 1, a happy AJ. There you have what looks like our winner, and I don't think he can miss now. He has about half a straightaway to go, and here's Sid Collins.
Well, nothing should happen now, and here comes the car, the Sheraton Thompson Special, the checkered flag for A.J. Foyt, with the right hand up in the air, waving to the crowd, the winner of the 1964 500-mile race.
And there the checkered flag waving, and Mario Rose is the winner. Rose is the winner of the 31st running of the Indianapolis 500-mile Motor Speedway Classic.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network. On the IMS Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his fourth 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Stava and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment.
And we await A.J. Foyt along with a host of others, including Tony Holman, who is cheering as loudly as the crowd. We've seen what has never been seen before, beginning with a woman driving in the field in the morning and A.J. finishing 4 up front at Indianapolis. Headed into victory lane now, A.J. Foyt in the gleaming Gilmore 14 Coyote, the Gilmore Racing Team home, and he wins again.
And there's the checkered flag for Mark Donahue, winner of the 1972 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Oh my goodness, we have 7, 8, 10 cars in a pack headed for one Jerry.
Well, you talk about the crowd getting on their feet. They do. So far, so good. They are nose to tail, a little bit of room. There's about an 8-car pack in front of Gary Lee right now.
Yeah, and in that pack, second place and third place. Little Al has gotten around Jack Villeneuve. He's back up to second, and now 2 cars separate second and third. Mr. Excitement is that youngster, that second-generation driver. We're impressed with Jack Villeneuve.
That was just a breathtaking moment.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network. is Indycar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now, perfectly aligned, back on the main straightaway to call the start of the greatest spectacle in racing, the voice of the 500, Paul Page.
Oh, they came off of turn 4 beautifully. They looked for the green flag. The green flag is out. And from the center of the road, James Hinchcliffe pulls away. Howard tried to duck over behind him, but Hinchcliffe is in front.
They must have found something with that car because he was not happy with the balance, not happy with the amount of horsepower he could have during that first run. Marco slides that bright yellow and blue Snapple car into pit lane. The fueler will engage the hose and the 4 tire changers will go to work. Marco has charged to the front. His grandfather won in 1969. A good pit stop for Andretti as he exits pit lane.
Hunter Ray slung past on the inside of Ed Carpenter. Marco Andretti in third. Then Scott Dixon, Elio Castroneves. That's the front 5 in a turn number 3, Moshe.
Not sure on restarts that up front is the place to be because of what happens with the slipstream, if you will. Ed Carpenter right there. Marco Andretti. Then Scott Dixon. Then Elio Castroneves. Front 5 set sail for the north end. Hunter Ray trying to draft Carpenter going into 1. And Carpenter on the outside. Ryan Hunter Ray on the inside. Hunter Ray will make the pass again. And Marco Andretti stays in the number 3 spot. He may want number 2.
Guys, Will Power, Ed Carpenter, Marco Andretti. Power beats him out of pit lane. So it's Power, Marco Andretti, Ed Carpenter, followed by J.R. Hildebrand.
And Hunter Ray darts in, moves to the outside as they get the white flag. 1 to go, Jerry.
They are side by side. Elio looks to the outside. Elio will have to take the number 2 spot. He's right on the rear wing of Ryan Hunter Ray.
Hunter Ray looking for number 1. Elio Castroneves looking for win number 4. Ryan Hunter Ray, 8 car lengths in front as they move in the backstretch for the final time.
And Elio make the move. 3 laps too early. Does he have anything at all left in the tank? A couple of turns to go. Ryan Hunter Ray leads in Indy. Turn number 800 is upon us. Less than a car length is the difference. The final turn. Hunter Ray to call the finish. The voice of the 500, Paul Page.
And it is Ryan Hunter Ray that is going to lead Elio Castroneves across the line. Ryan Hunter Ray has his first Indianapolis 500-mile race win. Elio Castroneves will have to wait for another year to get his 4th victory at the Indy 500.
This is Indycar Radio on the IMS Radio Network. IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
John Andretti starts to close into the back of Mansell. So John Andretti, who will drive 2 races in one day, is having one incredible drive here this morning. John Andretti strong, trying to run down the line. Nigel Mansell, a very quiet month. And look here, they almost go 3 wide. Now they get down into single file. And Robbie Gordon now running strong. He had some handling problems early, but Robbie moving up through the field.
As they head through 4, the big battle right now, Boycel clears traffic and gets through very safely. And everyone again making it through 4 as they head toward 1 and Jerry Baker.
Well, Mansell's found some running room all by his lonesome. Now we were watching Eddie Cheever. Man, he appears to be really flying out there. Oh, we got a bad crash in 1. 2 cars are gathered in. We've got a quick flash fire. It is out. Cars dive to the inside. One of the cars up against the outside wall dodges the crash. They are side by side just as we come out of number 1.
Less than half a lap ago. Brody Johncock by 5 car lengths over Rick Mears. They're in the north short chute.
Here they come. This is the final quarter lap. Johncock maintains the lead. The voice of the 500, Paul Page. Who's going to win it?
Gordon Johncock off the 4th turn. Mears is right behind him. Johncock. Mears makes a try. Johncock wins it by less than 1/10 of a second. Gordon Johncock has won his second 500. Rick Mears comes across in second place, almost side by side. And you should see the celebration that is taking place at the Patrick Racing pits. An incredible celebration now as they run down toward victory lane. What a finish!
Let's see what happens with the 68. He's going to climb the fence. He is out of the car, and Helio Castroneves climbs the fence in the front straight.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Well, we welcome you to Southern California. Yes, sunshiny Southern California. Long Beach is the place. The Verizon Indy cars have just rolled out of the pits, and we're ready for the very first practice session of this weekend, which has become a historic, a very important event in the United States from its first events in the mid-1970s. A dream of a couple of people to try to figure out how to run on the streets of a big city. They figured it out, and this has been an incredibly popular happening out here in Southern California ever since. I'm Paul Page. Mark James is alongside in the booth. Down in the pits, Jake Query and Nick Yeoman as the Indy cars head out for the very first time.
If there's one thing Firestone's learned over its 100 years in racing, is that if you don't keep moving forward, you're going to get left behind. So even though Firestone has more Indy 500 wins than any other tire on the planet, we're always more concerned with what we've done for you lately. That's why we're constantly trying to make our tires stronger, last longer, and handle better than ever. And we bring that same commitment to every tire we make, whether it's for the racetrack or for the open road. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
And back in Long Beach, California, what a difference a week has made. It's not raining, it's sunshiny. Still a lot of talk about the event last week, and some of the different changes have been made as a result. Changes, for example, in points for Ryan Hunter-Reay for an avoidable situation, according to the officials. That was handed down this week. And then, Mark James, we kind of got a surprise on the number 18 car last night. They were fitting a new driver for that car.
Yeah, and certainly an outstanding second-generation competitor, Rocky Moran Jr., will be piloting the number 18 for Dale Coyne Racing this weekend, replacing Carlos Huertas. We're sure that the layers of that story will continue to unfold over the course of the weekend. And that young man at one time had a lot of success in Atlantics. And I'll tell you what, rather than us speculate as to what the decision was, let's find out from the owner himself, who Nick Yeoman has on pit road.
Yeah, that's right, Mark James. You mentioned Rocky Moran Jr. in the 18 car to pair with Francesco Draconi this weekend. Dale, I mean, you're the co-owner. Basically, walk us through. How did this whole situation come about with Rocky Moran Jr.?
Well, Rocky's a local boy. He's been wanting to do this race every year. He calls me every year and says, "Can I do the race? Can I do the race?" And the opportunity presented itself, so we gave him a call. And luckily he tested this winter with another team, so he's a little current, and give me a shot here.
What can you tell us about the situation involving Carlos Huertas? Will we see him at all the rest of the season?
Still not sure about that. Right now we're kind of going one race at a time. So we'll see how things progress.
Rocky Moran Jr., obviously a guy that, as you mentioned, local ties. He drove in the Freedom 100 in 2005. And certainly this is a dream for him. How big is it for you to kind of grant the dream and give him that opportunity this weekend?
Oh, we like that. We've done a lot of that in the past. We gave a young guy named Paul somebody, what was his name, here about 24 years ago, his first run. We've done it with some other guys, and it's great that in their career they get a chance to do this. They've all strived to try to do these cars, and we've been happy that we've been able to give them that opportunity.
All right, that's Dale Coyne. He is the owner of Dale Coyne Racing. 2 cars this weekend, as we mentioned, Francesco Draconi and Rocky Moran Jr. making his maiden voyage, his first ever start this weekend in the Verizon Indycar Series.
And another change in cars happens, Nick, in the number 8 machine. Sage Karam will be replaced in this race by Sebastian Saavedra, who has made 56 starts in the Verizon IndyCar Series, 3 of those here in Long Beach. And Scott Harner will be calling the strategy for that 8 machine. Let's begin by talking about, first off, Sebastian Saavedra and what happens when you have a new driver in the car, just in terms of familiarity. How long does it take, pardon the pun, to get up to speed with one another?
Yeah, hopefully we get through that pretty quickly here today. As far as getting him up to speed, he hasn't been in a car since Fontana, and obviously us getting used to him and everything else. So hopefully the sooner than later for sure.
Obviously, Sage Karam is a kid that we all know about Sage's talent, but at the same time, there is youth in play there. How much of this move was about just getting Sage more opportunity to watch and learn, and what areas is it that you feel that he still needs the improvement?
Well, I mean, rookies are rookies, and rookies are going to do. They are going to make mistakes. I don't care who you are. I don't think it's a bad thing having him take a step back and watch from this perspective for a weekend. I mean, he had a bit of a tough outing at NOLA. Obviously, the conditions weren't great for him. His first time ever in the wet in an Indy car. So yeah, it was. He definitely had his hands full for sure.
What things in terms of Sage's reaction to it did you notice? I mean, when Sage was informed that Sebastian Saavedra was going to be in the 8 car, how did Sage take the news?
I tell you, it was absolutely professional. He has been well beyond his years as far as his professionalism through this whole process and everything else. So it's actually been really good.
In terms of in the car, Sebastian Saavedra brings to the table what for you?
Well, he obviously brings definitely a fair amount of experience and everything else. I mean, he hasn't been in a car since Fontana, but he has quite a few IndyCar starts under his belt. So it'll help us as a team having somebody in there that's a bit of a veteran to help us make sure that we're where we need to be.
Lastly, will he communicate with Sage after the fact, do you think, and just say, hey, here's some of the things I learned from the team, or here's an area where perhaps you can take advantage of something that I figured out with my experience here?
Yeah, I would absolutely hope so. I mean, our goal from the beginning was to make sure Sage is here and Sage is engaged. He went to the drivers' meeting, been in our engineering meetings, and we want him to be part of working with Sebastian and just hearing the whole process, and that'll do nothing but help him learn and get better as a race car driver for sure.
So the next time we see Sage in the car will be when?
Next weekend.
Okay, there we go. So Barber, Sage Karam back in the number 8. And, of course, AFS Racing and Gary Peterson helping out with Sebastian Saavedra. Scott Harder will be calling that race for that number 8 machine. Pretty good paint scheme. Black car now. That number 8 Comfort Revolution, which works with Sage Karam, is still on delivery for that scheme. But that AFS Racing we've become familiar with Sebastian Saavedra now sits on pit road. They did the install lap, and he'll be back out here on this track in Long Beach shortly.
And as long as you're talking, Jake, about the paint job on some of the cars, Scott Dixon is out on the track. Last week he was blue and white. This week he is back to the red and white Target car. He is one of the few that is taken to the track. It's been a little surprising. Right now, a majority of the teams are in the pits, still kind of waiting for something. Let's check those weather conditions, Nick.
Yeah, it is a surprise, Paul. Scott Dixon, one of the few. Just about everybody went out and did an installation lap, but so far, only Scott Dixon, Rocky Moran Jr., I think I saw the 19 of Francesco Draconi pull out on the racetrack. The 98 of Gabby Chavez also went out, but right now, plenty of room for Scott Dixon and the rest of these drivers, if they so choose, to maneuver and navigate around the streets here of Long Beach. As for those conditions, Paul, it's overcast, it's cold, snow flurries. We're waiting for it to really kick up a storm. No, it's typical Long Beach. Absolutely gorgeous. 74 degrees right now, the ambient temperature. Track temperature's pretty warm, up around 114 degrees Fahrenheit, but picture perfect blue skies and palm trees, Paul. It is what we have expected and come to expect here on the streets of Long Beach. And the nice thing, listen, we got to tip our cap to all the great folks at NOLA Motorsports Park last weekend. The weather certainly didn't cooperate, and some of those things you just cannot control. Still put on a wonderful event. I think we all had a good time, but at the same time, Paul, we were all very, very excited to get out here because zero chance of any rain this weekend. We're going to see temps in the mid-70s and sunshine all weekend long, which is what we like to see here in Long Beach.
Well, and you're right, Nick, and not only that, this event is very definitely happening. It's so much more than just an IndyCar race. Of course, there are a lot of other series on the track throughout the weekend, but there's also so much to do out and around the facility itself, which is, of course, as we mentioned, on the streets and most dominantly the Shoreline Drive of Long Beach, California, what used to be the old Long Beach Pike area. Well, we're getting some times in right now, though still only 5 are actually in a position to show times. Joseph Newgarden is the quickest, and the time would be a 1:11:13. Rocky Moran got out there right away, ran a 1:13:35. Montoya just turned a 1:11:3, and Scott Dixon a 1:13:62. Chavez is out there, Luca Felipe, and Charlie Kimball. And Coletti just took to the track.
A couple of guys we expect to have good weekends here. Among them, Will Power, who has a couple of wins here. Will Power has finished in the top 3 pole 6 times in 9 starts. So needless to say, Will Power likes the streets of Long Beach. He finds them to his liking. Also a driver that has had his share of dominance here in 9 starts. 3 wins for Sebastian Bourdais. 4 times in 9 starts, Jay Query, Bourdais has finished on the podium here at Long Beach.
And, you know, one of the things to keep an eye on this weekend, and it almost works as the antithesis of what we saw at NOLA Motorsports Park, and that is the fact that, as you had mentioned, Nick had mentioned, you know, we haven't seen a lot of people going out yet and laying down a lot of laps. For example, right now I'm inside Graham Rahal's pit stall, and he has yet to really go out other than an install lap if he did that. Keep in mind, the Firestone Firehawk tires, everybody this weekend is allotted 4 sets of primary tires, 3 sets of the softer compound, a little bit faster red-ringed tires, 7 total sets. Now, the one thing that comes into play with that, Paul, and you've seen this a lot over the course of the years, people start strategizing when and how often to use up those tires and when exactly is the primary time to use them. One thing we see this weekend, always the case in Long Beach and certainly a benefit, for the most part, you've got a pretty good idea what the temperature and the weather is going to be, and it's going to be consistent with nearly every session, practice, qualifying, or race that we will see over the course of the weekend here in Southern California. So as a result of that, there's really no urgency to go out and say, you know what, we've got to get some telemetry and some data on a set of tires in condition A, because condition B may come into play, condition C may come into play. We want to have all bases covered. You've got a pretty good idea at this particular track what you're going to see, and it's going to be the same and replicated in nearly every session, so you can space out the amount of attrition that you're putting on those tires over the course of the practice and the qualifying. I think that probably plays in to the amount of track activity that we will see here in the outset of this weekend. But again, 4 sets of the primary tires, 3 sets of the softer compound tires for each team that have been distributed here in those Firestone Firehawks.
Well, Jake Query, I think the word that you used was consistent, and that's probably the key to the whole thing. Because it is a consistent track, consistent weather, consistent temperatures, that means that you've got that one factor that you don't have to worry about, and you've got a control number, so now you can work on all the other aspects, and that's exactly what they're doing right now. Until a few moments ago, there were 10 cars not yet out on the track. A couple more have gone out. Dixon is now the quickest with a 1:09.52. Also in the 09s is Montoya. And we have 13 cars actually have taken to the track and been able to put a time down.
Fabulous facility, Paul. I think when it comes to oval racing, clearly your goal is to win the Indianapolis 500. I think when it comes to road and street course racing, this one is at the top of the list for most of these drivers. And, of course, the names that have been so legendary here over the years. Allinger Jr. won it 6 times, including a dominant stretch, Paul, from 88 to 91, in which no one else won this race. Paul Tracy a winner here. Danny Sullivan a winner here. Mario Andretti with 3 wins here. Michael a win here. Jimmy Vassar, Zanardi, as we see Bourdais into one of the runoff areas. Juan Montoya would pick up his 2nd win if he's victorious this weekend. It's just Sebastian Bourdais is another one that won it 3 in a row. Dominated here when it was under the Champ Car banner. And I just think it's cool to be a part of this event. But it's almost Indy-like from the standpoint that, as you well know, all of these owners and drivers have such respect and reverence for this event.
Bourdais, by the way, was just a quick runoff. He spun the car around and got right back on the racetrack. The whole concept of this race, as we've said, mid-'70s was when they came up with it. And there was a time when some answers surprised me because West Coast drivers started saying that this was more important to them than the Indianapolis 500. And I thought that was an interesting change. Of course, once they all got to Indy, I think that changed back. So now this is one of the 2 favorite courses. This is a road course. Of course, Indy is a 2.5-mile oval. But yeah, the long time that we've been racing here and the establishment of names like you just mentioned. Brian Redmond, by the way, was the first winner here. He did it in a Formula 5000 car when they were setting up for the Formula 1 to run here. At that time, you had to run another event on the track before the Formula 1 would come in, and so the organizers, Chris Book and company here, and the committee of 300, they decided to put on a Formula 5000 race. That was when that series was really viable and neat to see, and it was Brian Redmond in the Baraxo car. How's that for reaching back?
That is the sponsor, Baraxo.
That scared even me.
There's a multiple winner who is not here this year, Paul. He won it with 2 different race teams, of course. Mike Conway picked up his first win here in 2011. And then picked up the win last year driving for Ed Carpenter. The first time Ed decided to share that ride with Ed doing the ovals and Conway doing the road and street courses. Mike had an opportunity to go sports car racing this year, and Luca Filippi has replaced him in that car, so it will be interesting to see how well the number 20 does this weekend. But certainly last year Mike Conway was winner, Takuma Sato was won this race, and we're listing the winners more recently since, of course, the unification in 2007. Dario's in that category. We mentioned Will Power a couple of times, so yeah, it's an exciting weekend most assuredly, but I think it's compounded by the fact that we get the sunshine and the warmth of being in Southern California and being right on the beach here at Long Beach.
Mark, you mentioned that number 20 machine. It has now come in, that Fuzzy's Ultra Premium Vodka, very familiar paint scheme that we have seen. As you mentioned, new driver this year in terms of the full-time time in that 20 car, and that is Luca Filippi, and he has pulled in now and is looking over that telemetry and data. Probably see him back out. Another one that's interesting, seems like the years kind of fly by after a while, but keep in mind, this was the site for all intents and purposes of the last, as we knew it at the time, kart race before that unification. We knew the unification was going to take place, but they had it on the schedule, so they went ahead and ran here. That race was won at the time by KV Racing and their driver from Australia, Will Power. So you talked about some of the guys that have had success here. Another one that comes to mind is Ryan Hunter-Reay. I've always thought, Mark and Paul, that this is kind of the track that solidified Ryan Hunter-Reay and catapulted him into the full-time Verizon IndyCar Series status, because if you remember, he was running for Michael Andretti and had won races and had success with Izod on board with him, but it was once he won Long Beach that really everybody then paid attention to the fact that, look, they've got to do something to get him full-time moving into Indianapolis and beyond, and of course, that ended up happening for Ryan Hunter-Reay. The rest is history. He's now an Indy 500 and a Series champion. So this certainly is a track with historic clout on the West Coast, but on top of that, also a track that has an ability to just simply put people into another stratosphere on the road and streets and get them, in terms of the series itself, if they need to do so, that full-time backing, full-time sponsorship. Very, very historic and very prestigious race here in Long Beach.
That was in 2010, that win by Ryan Hunter-Reay, in which he outdueled Justin Wilson and Will Power. And Paul, that weekend, the IndyCar Series was racing at Twin Ring Motegi. And we actually did that race via a closed circuit feed from this very booth.
Really?
And the first
Here
night,
at Long Beach.
Here at Long
so
Beach.
So it's across the Pacific.
Yeah.
You're here in Long Beach.
We're doing this race and the IndyCar race that weekend.
Wow.
Doing this one live on the scene. We had to come back because that year they had issues with weepers at Motegi. We were here for a couple of hours till they finally called it. Then came back the next day, did the race, and it was won by Danica Patrick. Danica Patrick's lone win in the IndyCar Series.
And as I remember it, that was a battle, her and Castro Neves, and it was really one on a fuel strategy.
Fuel mileage, it sure was.
So, boy, we're full of history here today, all over the place. The only people that have not gone out now, well, actually, they have gone out now. We had Jakes and Kanan waiting in the pits. They've rolled out as well. We can give you some representative times now. The fast time is Ryan Hunter-Reay, 1:08.83. Power jumped in there at 1:09.13. Andretti, 0:09.15. Dixon, 9:19. And Coletti, 0:09.29. Saavedra, 09.42. He obviously hasn't lost any of his skills over time. And Chavez, 09.42 as well. And then how about Rahal coming in 8th? Munoz is 9th. Castro Neves is in 10th. And by the way, Castro Neves is in a different livery this weekend. It's a blue and white livery, the AAA, the Auto Club of California, Southern California, on the car, and he has been driving that car for all it's worth. I mean, he has been kicking the back end in many places. We just watch him come through one of the corners that takes him over to the what I call the backstretch on the Seaside. He had the back end sliding the whole way. So, you know, especially since we're talking these as aero cars now, with a great deal more aero, to see them actually track the back end like that's pretty impressive.
Fun watching these in-car camera views, Paul, that we have here in the booth right over the top of the driver's head. You get an idea just how very, very active those drivers are as they make their way around this course. And that long back straightaway on Seaside Way, which leads them to turn number 9, and they go underneath the tunnel. It's not really a tunnel, it's more like a crossover. But it gives you an idea when you watch it, just the opportunities that they have to quote-unquote rest when they're in the cockpit. And we see Graham Rahal now coming off of turn number 8 right now, slides through the shadows now along the condominiums to his high side. He'll climb on the binders and glide it to the left. There's some rumble strips to the bottom side. And we were out there once upon a time, Paul, calling turn number 9. And we were set up on the sun deck of the condominiums. And boy, one thing is for sure, there's some tire barriers there to the high side, just past the apex of that turn, and if you don't judge it just right, those tires will flat reach out and grab you. We've seen a number of drivers do that in both Indy Lights and the Verizon IndyCar Series over the years.
Sebastian Bourdais just jumped up to second. He is an 08.90, so only two in the 108 range. That's Ryan Hunter-Reay and Sebastian Bourdais. Then you pick up third place with Munoz, and you go all the way down to 16th, 17th now, Pagno, and they're all in the 109 range. So it's a very tight field that we're looking at here. We'll see how many more will find their way into the 108s and how soon they will do that.
DA Lubricants, of course, on the car of Graham Rahal as we watch it fly around the streets of Long Beach. But a new paint scheme this weekend. Graham flying the colors of Steak and Shake. Picked up that sponsorship for the month of May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it's a sweet-looking race car. Bright red. It's a new look for Graham Rahal this weekend. Graham's, gotten off to a pretty decent start, Paul. He had, I think you would call it more than a serviceable weekend over the weekend at NOLA. He was one that didn't seem to struggle with the conditions as much as others, and I know that Graham was a little frustrated with the turn of events at St. Pete. Thought his car was a little faster than where it ended up, and I think Graham is poised to try to grab some momentum this weekend as we start to prepare for the month of May.
Yeah, it's kind of neat seeing Steak and Shake on the car.
Sure.
Red car with the Steak and Shake logo that is black and white. Graham Rahal, of course, at the wheel. Hunter Ray, Bourdais, Munoz, Montoya, Power. That's top 5. Then Andretti, Rahal, Dixon, Coletti, and Canan. That takes you through 10th. Saavedra, Chavez, Helio Castroneves, Jack Hawksworth, and 15th, our winner from a week ago, James Hinchcliffe. Let's talk about that just a minute.
Wow.
If we get these times coming in. The rain and everything notwithstanding, what a gutsy call that is incredibly good management of the whole operation, the team, the tactic, the strategy, and it got him a win. That was just impressive to see.
Yeah, and there's no other way to put that, Paul. The bottom line is this. Lady Luck smiled upon them, because had that thing at any point gone back green and ran more stints than what they ended up running, 26 of the last 32 were under caution. Any more green flag laps other than that, Paul, and I don't know that Hinch could have avoided having to come onto pit road, but ifs and buts. There have been times when Hinch probably felt like that things didn't fall his way, but I think it shows not only the quality of the driver, but it also shows the quality of that race team, because they lost some pretty notable over-the-wall personnel, and on the other side of the wall, some personnel there during the off-season. But it shows that they're capable of winning week in and week out. And not only was his run impressive, but a pretty impressive run by his teammate James Jakes as well, who wasn't in the car all of last year.
Tony Kanaan, a 1:08.81. He is now quickest, so we have 3 in the 08 range. And getting a little look at Gabby Chavez on the big screens here as he gets the back end tracking a little too much. Gets out right next to the wall. Didn't look like he touched it, though. I'm looking for white wall tires. I haven't seen them yet.
That's what I used to see coming off of turn 4 when I was doing races at a short track in western Indiana called the Terre Haute Action Track. It looked like he was running on the dirt there coming off of that turn a little bit, Paul.
Well, and the thing that with this new aero package, the fact that apparently they can set the car up fairly loose and still keep it under control on a surface like this here. And Jake was talking earlier about the tires and the allocations for the weekend and the conditions that they are testing under. One of the aspects of this, too, is the fact that we're talking a circuit that changes in surface. Gabby Chavez just went off in 1 and came right back on the course. A little too hot getting into the corner, but there's plenty of runoff space. That's one of the good things about this track is on the key corners, there's plenty of room for you to make a mistake and still get on the brakes and still get that stopped.
Yeah, I think the same benefit exists at St. Petersburg. There are plenty of good runoff areas at St. Petersburg, and most of them were tested mightily, unfortunately. But, the thing that has always amazed me about this track is, especially, we mentioned that back straightaway and that long front straightaway, all the high-speed corners that there are, and there's some room. The track is plenty wide in places, but, Paul, it is ultra-narrow in others.
And how about these new aero packages? One for Honda, another for Chevrolet, and Nick's been following a lot of the changes on those packages.
Yeah, something, Paul, that I just noticed here during this practice session with the Chevrolet aero kit. As it rolled out for the first 2 races of the season, those front wings had 2 vertical winglets that kind of stood up, almost looked like rear view mirrors, except they were kind of bolted to the front wing. Those are noticeably absent on the Chevrolet aero kits here this weekend. Haven't been able to find anyone, and I'm hoping we can line somebody up for the second session later today from Chevrolet, but I did talk to Will Phillips, who's the VP of Technology for Indycar, and he told me that they have been working with Chevrolet, and it's not an aerodynamic thing, it is strictly for safety. Of course, we saw those vertical winglets. They seem to be very brittle, very frail in that first race at St. Petersburg, and that was a majority of the full course cautions that we saw, was those things getting sheared off and oftentimes kicked up into the air. So those are noticeably absent from all the Chevrolet cars this weekend, Paul, and my understanding is that it is strictly a safety reason. Certainly there are fans lined up all around this race course, and certainly these street courses with the tight walls, these guys running wheel to wheel, that's certainly an opportunity to shear those winglets off. So we will see some changes to the Chevrolet Aero kit this weekend, Paul.
Eagle eye, Nick. Nice call.
I know we're supposed to remain neutral, but again, watching it on the monitor, that Fuzzy's car, that number 2, that is a sweet-looking race car. I love that. I love that color scheme.
The gold and the dark green.
Yeah, that dark green, and then I guess what they refer to as kind of a Vegas gold. All of the cars, quite frankly, just because of the design, especially adding the aero kits. I think these cars just really pop now, and later this year, Paul, when we get the opportunity to go to places like Texas and Iowa and see them under the lights, that's when they're really cool as well.
Now, Mark, if I could, when you're talking about paint schemes that are really cool, and we are to be neutral, I understand, like you mentioned, but as somebody who grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and was born in 1972, when you have Steak and Shake on the side of a car that's going to run the Indianapolis 500, that is only a Bob Knight decal away from the trifecta of essentially everything that mattered to me during my childhood. I can tell you that on the north side of Indianapolis, my buddies and I, every Friday or Saturday night, if we were out, it was usually Steak and Shake where we'd go. We loved the Indy 500, and of course, Indiana University basketball was a big thing to us growing up. But that, for Graham Rahal, is a really, really cool-looking race car. And of course, it comes from the fact, admittedly, David Letterman had mentioned it, the fact that he grew up going to Steak and Shake at 52nd and Keystone during his childhood in Indianapolis. So there's a bit of nostalgia that goes along with that. And again, Graham Rahal, they're going to have milkshake machines in the month of May as part of Graham Rahal's involvement with Steak and Shake. And I hazard to guess, probably should he win the Indianapolis 500 like his dad did back in 1986, as we'd mentioned, probably a cold glass of milk and a big milkshake as well.
You know, you're right, though. If you don't live in Indianapolis, of course most of us do, who are on this broadcast, it's kind of hard to understand how really significant that whole Steak and Shake sponsor is. I'm the same way. I'm same as Jake. I mean, I remember heading out for the Steak and Shake and the steak burgers, and they still have malts, which is important.
That's right.
Malts, not shakes. Canaan, Hunter Ray, Bourdais. Those are the top three. They are the only cars in the 1 minute 8 second range. Bourdais is followed fourth place by Munoz. He is a 1:09.01, so any lap now I'm thinking he can go over that ledge. Munoz, Montoya, Hawksworth, Dixon, Pagano, Power, and Andretti. Those are the top 10 currently in the practice, this very first practice on the streets of Long Beach. We were talking a bit about it before, and let's talk a little more about it, Mark. The fact that the surface here changes constantly. Because they are city streets, you'll have some asphalt in some places, right, concrete in others. And while, again, as suggested earlier, there is some consistency, that is where there is not. You're talking surfaces that heat at different rates and have adhesion at different rates.
And in terms of being able to tackle this place, Paul, the thing that I have found most consistently when you talk to drivers, or you hear drivers and crew chief talk to the people that handle the setup, the hairpin, which is the signature portion of this race course, it's the final turn. That's the place where you need to carry the most momentum. Now, sometimes, especially early on in the race, when you're in close quarter racing, it's a little hard to carry momentum through there when you're banging wheels with other drivers. We've seen that almost exclusively at turn number 11. But I think the thing that makes turn number 11 so valuable is the reward that you gain in that straightaway that seems to go on forever, and that's where you gain all your momentum for the rest of the course.
And that many of the drivers will say is very difficult to figure the approach into that. You're coming off of a left-hander, and do you want to come off tight, late apex on the turn before so that you can swing wide, burn off less energy, or do you want to come in sweeping into a tight apex right at the center of that hairpin turn? And I don't think anybody's actually decided which one is best, because they both are in use. And of course, in traffic, then it becomes a little clogged down there from time to time at the hairpin. But you're right, that is kind of the signature of this track for a long time. It was the first turn at the end of the Shoreline straightaway as a right angle right-hand turn. But then they built the beautiful aquarium that's here now, and they decided, wouldn't it be neat if we ran that semicircle around the aquarium? And that's exactly what they've done, and it makes for some beautiful shots by both television and still cameras. It's really a very pretty thing.
And I guess we should add that front straightaway is a front straightaway in name only, Paul, because it is a long bender, if you will.
Straight's not a word there.
That's right. No, the only place that's essentially straight that has any length at all to it is what I guess you would consider the back straightaway, if you will, with Seaside, and that is between 8 and 9.
There have been a number of different iterations, as I said, of this racetrack. In fact, in the original form, they actually went up the hill that is right at the edge of this track, right along Seaside. There's a pretty good hill there that brings you up to the city proper, and the street at the top of that runs parallel to the water, as it were, is Ocean. And they used to actually start on Ocean and then come and turn onto Linden, a right hand that brought them onto Linden, and dive down that hill into a left-hander. And it was pretty tight. It was a pretty tight right angle. I mean, it was a narrow turn to get into. And finally, they decided that maybe we ought to try to keep this all down more in the area that they're in right now. And except for some minor changes, like we discussed at the first turn, that's pretty much the course that it's been for some considerable time now.
Kanaan continues P1, Paul, 111.93, and TK finished 6th at New Orleans after finishing 3rd at St. Petersburg. And I, as I said, going back to his win a year ago, or not quite a year ago, but at the end of the season, in the season finale, I just have a sneaking suspicion that TK is on a bit of a roll, and a guy that could figure probably into the championship chase. Ryan Hunter-Ray is P2 at 11.09, and then Bourdais. Munoz finding the quick way around. Then Montoya and Hawksworth, Dixon, Pagano, Power, and Marco Andretti, your top 10.
33 minutes of this session have already gone away. It's been clean and green the entire time. And again, and it's attracting my attention, and I think it's spectacular to see. As you see the going away shots on the video coverage that they have up on the big screens here, almost everybody is pitching the back end, coming around these corners and really sliding the back end. That's spectacular to see. I mean, that's enjoyable.
Scott Dixon goes to P1 now. His lap at 1:08.65. We should correct the speed that we gave for Tony Kanaan. His quick lap at 1:08.81. And everybody, the top 4, we should say, in the 108s. Munoz, Montoya, Hawksworth, Power, Pagano, they're in the 109s, along with Andretti, Rahal, Coletti, Jakes, and Saavedra. And also in the 109s, all the way through Charlie Kimball in the 20th position. And then in the 111 range is Felipe, Rocky Moran Jr., and Francisco Draconi. Tony Kanaan, if everything falls into place here at Barber and the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, believe it or not, in his storied career, the Indianapolis 500 will be his 300th career start.
You know, one thing that we are seeing in that...
One thing Firestone's learned over its 100 years in racing is that if you don't keep moving forward, you're going to get left behind. So even though Firestone has more Indy 500 wins than any other tire on the planet, we're always more concerned with what we've done for you lately. That's why we're constantly trying to make our tires stronger, last longer, and handle better than ever. And we bring that same commitment to every tire we make, whether it's for the racetrack or for the open road. Whatever you drive a Firestone.
Mark, let's go back to St. Petersburg, the first race of this season, just 2 races ago. But the headline pretty much read, is anybody going to be able to beat the Penske team? And almost immediately we go to New Orleans and we find, they can be beaten there. In fact, the only guy really showing anything at all out of the team was Helio Castroneves, and came in right behind the winner, James Hinchcliffe. But let's look at this chart right now and ask the question, how is Roger Penske's team doing? Will Power is in 5th. 8th is Elio Castroneves. 7th is Montoya. Pagano is in 10th. It used to be the first 4 positions were Penske, at least at St. Pete. So I think that headline's gone away. They obviously are on a very level playing field right now with everybody else.
Well, parity's been a bit of a hallmark of this series over the past couple of years, Paul. We say that in terms of how many different winners we've had over the course of the season, but the way the points stack up and the way the championship is decided, Paul, it's clear that consistency is rewarded, and part of that consistency comes from having the benefit of a multi-car team. That's why we have seen the dominance of late, I think, by Ganassi and Penske as a whole. And other crew chiefs have said it that don't have that luxury. The multi-car teams are built to be successful over the course of the season, gives them the chance to win the championship, and that's why you see some of the other single-car teams have looked to expand, like Voigt and teams like that, and Sarah Fisher and Ed Carpenter, Wayne Carpenter. They combined their efforts going into the season. There's a lot of benefits to having a teammate.
Well, probably the most key of those is the fact that you get more data.
Sure.
I mean, you got 4 cars out there, as you do in Penske. Ganassi's got all his cars out there. And you send everyone out with a little different setting. And then you watch, see what they come back. They put their heads together from all of the cars, and then they make a change. You can't do that. You can't even do that if you're a 2-car team. You can approach that. And if you're a 1-car team, then you've got to hope that you got some buddies up and down the pit lane that might get you a little more data on what their car might be doing to help you out.
At least for now, the Ganassi teammates of Dixon and Kanaan appear to be working quite nicely. Ryan Hunter-Ray, again, always successful here. Hunter-Ray is 3rd quick. Bourdais is 4th quick. We've told you he's a multiple winner here, and he understands this racetrack pretty well. Then Power, Munoz, Montoya, Castroneves, Hawksworth, and Hinchcliffe, your top 10. Then we go with Hinchcliffe. We already mentioned Hinchcliffe in the top 10. Pagano, Andretti, Rahal, then Coletti, 14th quick. Jakes in 15th. And then Saavedra, Chavez, Sato, Newgarden, Kimball, Filippi, Rocky Moran Jr., and Francisco Decrone.
Let's tell you what to expect throughout the weekend here from the Grand Prix at Long Beach this afternoon at 4:30. I'm going to give the times Eastern. And at 4:30 Eastern, you're going to see the Indy Lights practice. Then the Indy cars will come back at 6:45 Eastern and practice until 7:30. Now tomorrow, first thing in the morning, it's Indy Lights that are out to practice. That's at 12:15 Eastern. It's early in the morning here. And then the Indy cars will practice at 1 to 1:45 tomorrow. And the Lights will qualify then at 3:55. These are all Eastern time zone. And IndyCar qualifying will come up at 4:55 in the afternoon. So we've got a lot, and Mark James, you're going to be working a lot this weekend.
Yeah, we're pretty anxious this weekend, much like we had at St. Petersburg, although he's going to join us for practice and qualifying as well. Zach Veach will be in the booth with us. We actually flew out here yesterday with Zach. We ran into him at the airport in Indy, and we had the same flight through Houston, and he hopped on the shuttle. I mean, we had to call him Mister and carry his suitcases for him, but we understand.
Well, he's with us now.
That's right.
We don't have a headset for him.
He's in here in the booth, and we will have him coming up at the bottom of the hour. He'll be in here along with Jake Query, Nick Yeoman, Rob Howden. The whole gang will be ready to go as we get ready to watch the Indy Lights get back to action. Paul, they had last weekend off. We had the F2000s and Pro Mazda at New Orleans, but no Indy Lights. But we're happy to have the Lights back with us this weekend. Pretty excited about that.
We're getting the word from race control now. 5 minutes left in this session, the first practice session for the Verizon Indycars. Let's go down to Nick.
That's right, Paul. Found an interesting story down here on pit lane. Of course, rookie Stefano Coletti. We've all been impressed with him so far. Well, he's got a very talented sister, Alexandra Coletti. She competed as an alpine skier for the country of Monaco in the 2006 Winter Olympics in Italy. And again in 2010, what do you think of this whole thing? I mean, I'm sure your brother thinks you're crazy as an alpine skier, but what do you think of him as a race car driver here at the Grand Prix of Long Beach?
Yeah, he's also a crazy guy. And here it's really exciting to be here and to see this race. It's the first time for me in IndyCar, and it's pretty cool.
How did your brother get involved in racing? How did you get involved in alpine skiing?
Well, he started really young with go-kart racing over Europe, and then some formulas in Europe, and I just started skiing, and this was my passion. He was a skier too, but then he preferred to race with the cars.
Certainly, they're completely different sports, but what do you see in alpine skiing and in race car driving? Where are there similarities and maybe the training and getting ready?
And the same thing is the speed. I'm a downhill skier. He's a fast car driver. The speed is what we have in common.
When you ride in a car with your brother, does he let you drive?
Yeah, sometimes yes. We're crazy both.
All right, well, enjoy the weekend.
Thank you very much.
That's Alexandra Coletti. She is the brother of Stefano Coletti. Paul, a pretty talented family down here enjoying the weekend at Grand Prix Long Beach.
And obviously a family that loves adrenaline, because those are both sports that are really challenging
Not
and
for the faint
really
of heart,
scary. Well, we're talking about those people who have made it into the 1:08, 1 minute and 8 second range, and now it goes all the way down to 6. Those in the 1:08 in order are Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Sebastian Bourdais, Will Power, and Juan Montoya. Munoz is in there in 7th. He is the fastest who is not in the 1:08 range, and we're coming very close now to the end of this session. How predicting do you think these first practice sessions are to qualifying? Are they really working on qualifying? Are they working on the race? Or just kind of generically working on making the car all around better?
We can ask them shortly. I'm not sure that they'll tell us, but we can ask them, or at least be very forthcoming. That's an interesting question, Paul. I mean, quite frankly, they don't have a lot of practice time. I mean, there's one more session this afternoon, and we typically see longer sessions than this, but the schedule is so compact over the course of the weekend because of all of the forms of racing that we have here that the time is limited for all the series. So my guess is they probably are working on qualifying setup. If not this session, then certainly the next session, because they'll get ready to go qualifying tomorrow. And as we've seen, we didn't get a chance to go qualifying at NOLA. But a few weeks ago, when we qualified for the opener, that margin between perceived failure and success when it comes to qualifying is so very, very slim, and it has a hearty effect on their emotions, no question about it.
And there's another place where the multi-car team comes into play, because we can start the day with say 2 cars looking qualifying, 2 cars looking race. We can adjust those numbers as we see fit. Again, you get 3-4 cars out there, even 2. Substantially better than running a single car team.
No question.
So we're just getting the word that Luca Filippi has left side damage, and he certainly does to the right front wing. He's also having a little control problem with it. Not sure if that means the damage is more extensive than just the left front of the wing, but he's right now trying to limp his way back to the pits. And of course, that's the number 20 car that was the winning car here a year ago, just not with Luca.
Yeah, Luca Filippi piloting that entry this year. Ed Carpenter getting ready to take the wheel back over for the 500. Of course, Luca will be at Barber next week, and then the following 2 weeks following that will be at the Grand Prix of Indy. And you can tell, Paul, that's more than just wing damage on that car. He's having a tough time keeping that thing in a straight line as he gets ready for turn number 9.
One of the other things to talk about in regards to last year and how we are this year, he's white-walled the left rear as well, and I think you see it's flat.
Yeah, I think it looks like it might be flat. He certainly did. You can't tell the brand anymore. That Firestone Firehawk has gone off of it, and now he's gonna get off the track as quickly as he can. But there's just 30 seconds left in the session. Hopefully, the damage not too extensive, and the team will be able to get that put back together before that next session this afternoon.
Well, the checkered comes out. The session has come to an end, and you may remember at this race and at the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, since we're talking both, they were standing starts last year, and there are no standing starts in the season this year. And I think that probably the decision there eventually became that it takes quite a bit of extra gear in the car, extra software and methodology of the whole technique of the standing start launch that probably was not appropriate to be spending on the cars. Especially, I liked it because I think the Indycar tradition is the rolling start.
Yeah, and I prefer the rolling start of the two. I was kind of indifferent to either process. Both offer their share of drama. The one thing that I hated to see go away was double file restarts. I like the intrigue and the drama that the double file restarts add. But who knows? Maybe one or both of those will come back someday, and that's just one person's opinion, and maybe more opinions than that. But certainly we know this: once the green flag flies tomorrow, whether it's a rolling start, double file restart, single file restarts, or whatever, there will be some unpredictability to that green flag on Sunday, Paul, when we get ready to go racing. There are always some intriguing stories that unfold here before our very eyes in Long Beach.
That run down to the first turn here, that left-hander that then circles you back to the right around the aquarium, is always a critical moment, and it's fun to watch. The whole thing here is really enjoyable. Let's give you the rundown now and some of the times. At 1:08:65 is Dixon. I'll tell you what, Jake, you've got Michael Andretti. Let's talk to Michael first.
When you talk about success at Long Beach, the name Andretti, of course, is one from 1984 to 87. Nobody but an Andretti won this race. Let's talk about the three cars that you have in right now. Ryan Hunter-Reay looks like has got a pretty good setup right now. Did you go with three different among your three teams, three different setups that you were working in this session?
Well, we really don't talk about that publicly, but they're all working together, working different things, and we'll go back and compare notes and see what they all learned.
If I told you this is a private conversation, you wouldn't buy that, would you?
I would not, no.
Hey, let's talk about obviously the really good weekend that you had in NOLA with Simona Di Silvestro, and how close you were to getting her to run here at Long Beach, and the reason why it's a 3-car now, not a 4-car team.
Yeah, we were hoping that we were going to get some good news from potential sponsor, but unfortunately it didn't come through, and so we were a little disappointed, but we're still fighting and we're still trying, and hopefully we'll be able to get some here soon.
So we can't rule out the possibility that she's going to return for you at some point this season.
Well, she's definitely going to be at Indy for sure,
right.
But we're trying to get a lot more than that. So.
Lastly, just what does Long Beach mean to you, Michael? I mean, I know you and your father both have won here, and it's a special and historic place. What's it mean to your family?
It's really special to our family. It's really special to me personally because it is where I won my very first race, and I actually won my last race, which bookended my whole career. So it's really special. It's just it's such a great event. It's 40 some years old now, and it's such an important part of our calendar, and we just all love coming here.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks.
That's Michael Andretti, guys. Nick Yeoman?
Yeah, we'll grab James Hinchcliffe real quickly. At last check, I believe he ended up 11th on the time charts, talking with his engineer, Alan McDonald. We'll sneak in here and grab Hinch for a quick word. Let's talk about this practice session. Biggest thing you guys worked on right off the truck.
Well, there's always some basic things you got to run through first time on a street circuit, things like ride heights and aero and stuff like that. So, the Friday first practice is always a little bit messy with a bunch of different rubber on track, not a lot of our Firestone rubber down yet. So, we sat for the first little bit and just, made some pretty basic changes at the beginning there just to kind of get a feel of what we need to go, which direction we need to go, and I think we found a start.
All right, that's James Hinchcliffe, our winner from 1 week ago in New Orleans.
Well, let's run down that list for you now, starting with Dixon at 1:08:65. He is then followed by Kanaan, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Simon Pagenaud, Will Power, Sebastian Bourdais, and Juan Montoya. Montoya is the slowest in the 108 range. He's at 1:08:96, so only 0.3 of a second difference right there. And now, beginning with 8th, it's Munoz, Castroneves, Hawksworth, Hinchcliffe, Andretti, Rahal, Coletti, Jakes, Chavez, Saavedra, Sato, Kimball, and Newgarden is 20th. 21st is Felipe, followed by Rocky Moran Jr. and Dracone. So that's the way they are in order in terms of the practice that we have seen here. Rocky, who actually was the first one to put a time up on the board, stayed out there quite a bit. He's got some laps on there, 21 laps, which is, well, you compare it, say, to Dixon, who ran 14. So they're trying to get a lot of seat time for him, and that's exactly what they've done, though considerably off the pace, as one might expect, with a 1:11:11.
Now, this is a guy with, although not a lot of recent experience in open-wheel racing, this was the guy that once upon a time was on the radar of a lot of people, Paul Page. He ran Atlantics one year and finished second in the championship. The same year, a guy named Ryan Hunter-Reay finished sixth. So, a lot has happened since then, that's for sure. But a pretty good effort for the first time out for Rocky Moran Jr. Jay Query?
Our reigning lights champion is still acclimating to the Verizon IndyCar Series, and that is Gabby Chavez. How was that 98 machine?
No, it was really good. I think, we were really quick early on.
we may have been suited too well for the early conditions, and really we just got stuck there. We didn't improve after that, but the guys know what we need to do to get it going better.
How much do you play with qualifying type setups in the early first session?
Early first session really is just about learning what the car is going to want for qualifying. So ultimately, I think we're setting up the car to go as fast as we can here, which is what you want in qualifying and in the race. So yeah, every practice is leading up to that.
Leslie, let me ask you, just in terms of making the switch, moving up from the lights, where obviously you were a champion, into the Verizon Indy cars, what is the biggest difference that you've noticed?
I think just the competition. Obviously in lights you've got 5, 6, 7 guys that are really good, and here you multiply that that number by quite a bit. So it's just everything's a lot tighter. Make a small mistake and it costs you a lot more.
Well, we wish you the best of luck in that Bowers & Wilkins 98 machine for Brian Herta.
Thank you very much.
That's Gabby Chavez, guys.
So that's it for this very first practice session for the Verizon Indy cars. It's the Indy Lights that are coming up next. Mark James is going to stay right here in the booth so that he can give you the coverage of that coming up actually in about 9 minutes. But on behalf of the crew for this first practice with the Verizon Indy cars, we thank you for joining us here and joining us again for the Indy Lights, and then later in the day we'll have both Indy Lights and IndyCar back.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his 4th 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment.
And we await A.J. Foyt along with a host of others, including Tony Holman, who is cheering as loudly as the crowd. We've seen what has never been seen before, beginning with a woman driving in the field in the morning and A.J. finishing 4 up front at Indianapolis. Headed into victory lane now, A.J. Foyt and the gleaming Gilmore 14 Coyote, the Gilmore Racing Team, home, and he wins again.
And there's the checkered flag for Mark Donahue, winner of the 1972 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Oh my goodness, we have 7, 8, 10 cars in a pack headed for one Jerry.
Well, you talk about the crowd getting on their feet. They do. So far, so good. They are nose to tail, a little bit of room. There's about an 8-car pack in front of Gary Lee right now.
Yeah, and in that pack, second place and third place. Little Al has gotten around Jack Villeneuve. He's back up to second, and now 2 cars separate second and third. Mr. Excitement is that youngster, that second-generation driver. We're impressed with Jack Villeneuve, but right now he's dropped to third. And there's Al Unser Jr., and then Bobby Rahal. Jack Villeneuve goes on the outside. He goes high. You can't go too wide in the turns. They're doing it today.
They sure are coming through 4. Now they go single file. Maybe they got a little scared last time. Who knows? But going through 4 this time, everybody single. They come toward the main straightaway, Bob Jenkins.
That was just a breathtaking moment.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network. is Indycar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now, perfectly aligned, back on the main straightaway to call the start of the greatest spectacle in racing, the voice of the 500, Paul Page.
Oh, they came off of turn 4 beautifully. They look for the green flag. The green flag is out. And from the center of the road, James Hinchcliffe pulls away. Howard tried to duck over behind him, but Hinchcliffe is in front.
They must have found something with that car because he was not happy with the balance, not happy with the amount of horsepower he could have during that first run. Marco slides that bright yellow and blue Snapple car into pit lane. The fueler will engage the hose and the 4 tire changers will go to work. Marco has charged to the front. His grandfather won in 1969. A good pit stop for Andretti as he exits pit lane.
Hunter Ray slung past on the inside of Ed Carpenter. Marco Andretti in third, then Scott Dixon, Elio Castroneves. That's the front 5 in a turn number 3, Mustang.
Not sure on restarts that up front is the place to be because of what happens with the slipstream, if you will. Ed Carpenter right there. Marco Andretti, then Scott Dixon, then Elio Castroneves. Front 5 set sail for the north end. Hunter Ray trying to draft. Carpenter going into 1.
And Carpenter on the outside. Ryan Hunter Ray on the inside. Hunter Ray will make the pass again. And Marco Andretti stays in the number 3 spot. He may want number 2.
Guys, Will Power, Ed Carpenter, Marco Andretti. Power beats him out of pit lane. So it's Power, Marco Andretti, Ed Carpenter, followed by J.R. Hildebrand.
And Hunter Ray darts in, moves to the outside as they get the white flag. 1 to go, Jerry.
They are side by side. Elio looks to the outside. Elio will have to take the number 2 spot. He's right on the rear wing of Ryan Hunter Ray.
Hunter Ray looking for number 1. Elio Castroneves looking for win number 4. Ryan Hunter Ray, 8 car lengths in front as they move in the backstretch for the final time.
Did Elio make the move 3 laps too early? Does he have anything at all left in the tank? A couple of turns to go. Ryan Hunter Ray leads in Indy. Turn number 800 is upon him. Less than a car length is the difference. The final turn. Hunter Ray to call the finish. The voice of the 500, Paul Page.
And it is Ryan Hunter Ray that is going to lead Elio Castroneves across the line. Ryan Hunter Ray has his first Indianapolis 500-mile race win. Elio Castroneves will have to wait for another year to get his 4th victory at the Indy 500.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Grand Prix of Long Beach presented by Allied Building Products. Hello, everyone, from the gorgeous streets of Long Beach, California. Southern California, sunshine, blue skies, the order of the day, and fans continue to file into the historic facility. Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tire take to the track for their first practice session of the weekend. I'm Mark James. Jake Query will join us momentarily. We're happy to have back with us this week Zach Veach. And Zach, first of all, welcome back. Secondly, they got something last week that probably, I'm guessing Ed Jones did not want to have, and that's a weekend off after more or less maxing out on points over the course of the weekend at St. Petersburg, sweeping the doubleheader. I would imagine it was an excruciating wait for Ed Jones to get back into a race car.
Exactly. When things are going right for you, you just want to keep just chugging away each weekend at a time, because when you're sitting and waiting, the other teams have the opportunity to kind of sit back and go through their plans and see what they did right and wrong and kind of come back even stronger as well. So, I mean, the one thing is I'm glad to see Matthew Brabham. He's back this weekend. I was looking for a while. He wasn't going to be part of it, but I think it's going to be an exciting show, just as St. Pete showed us a couple of weeks ago.
I don't want to take anything away from Ed Jones, but let's face it, that team that he's racing for, obviously, Carlin Racing, a long and storied history across the pond, and I think they put the rest of the Lights paddock on notice that they're here to compete for a championship.
They definitely upped the ante. I mean, when you come in that dominant that early on, especially it being your first race kind of over here in the Indy Lights Series, it really opens up everyone's eyes and kind of sets the tone that everybody else needs to be on the same level. I know with Andretti Autosport and Bilardi as well, those guys are pushing extremely hard. Schmidt's going to be right there behind them as well, just trying to take Carlin and show him that, hey, we're just as strong now.
Pit road a busy place, Nick Yeoman. No sooner did they clear the cars off the grid from the first Verizon IndyCar Series practice sessions, they started bringing these Indy Lights cars out.
Yeah, it is a very busy place down here on pit lane. Just a 15-minute turnaround from the end of the IndyCar practice session to the Indy Lights session, and that the time-wise, we got it started on time, but for a lot of these drivers, they are still getting buckled in. Ethan Ringel, R.C. Enerson getting buckled into their race cars. Matthew Brabham's back after an installation lap, as Zach mentioned. Good to see him back on the series. But yeah, a little surprising. I mean, with just 15 minutes, it's tough because those Indy cars can't just drive off of pit lane back to the paddock. They, of course, have to be towed back to the paddock. So it took a little time to get those Indy cars off of pit lane, get all the Lights cars on pit lane, get all those drivers strapped in. But thankfully, Mark, it looks like everybody is strapped in. Good to have Rob Howden back here on pit lane today here in Long Beach. Good afternoon, Rob.
Thank you very much, Nick. You know, one of the really interesting things about this weekend, I think, here for the Indy Lights program will be there's only 3 returning drivers from last year who actually have any seat time or track time here at the Grand Prix of Long Beach. This should be interesting. The fact that we only have 4 sessions for Indy Lights this weekend. And right before the drivers strapped in, I had a quick chance to chat with Jack Harvey, who celebrated a birthday just 2 days ago, and asked him if he thought that was going to be a little bit of an advantage. And he said it must be. To be able to get on the track here, he's going to be a bit quicker. He knows the racetrack. He knows just what it's like to be here on this big weekend. He thinks it's going to be a little bit of an advantage for him and the other 2 drivers because they do have a little bit of track time here at Long Beach.
Well, let's talk to a guy who's actually been around here in a race car on more than one occasion. Zach, tell us about this circuit here at Long Beach.
Well, I mean, this is one of everybody's favorites, you know, particularly it is mine, because it's like the Indianapolis 500 of street courses. It's a beautiful place to be racing. It's got such a long history and heritage to it that just getting to be on this track as a young driver in Indy Lights is something that I think we all hold very dear to us. And, you know, just it is one of those things, as we were talking, that the drivers that have a little bit of experience, it is going to be a bit of an advantage, because when Gabby Chavez and I came here last year, being the only 2 that ran in the previous season, you know, we definitely were the quicker 2 at the beginning of the weekend. So it's just, you know, getting seat time and getting familiar with it, because this is a street course that has really fast corners. So, I mean, you really have to be fully committed and just know where every inch is so you keep yourself out of trouble.
There are places that some drivers prefer to others, but am I correct in assuming, we talked about it during the Verizon IndyCar Series practice, how important is being fast through that hairpin to get to that straightaway?
Well, I mean, Kyle Moyer, from when he was with Andretti, he told me something early on that says you only have to worry about truly the corners that lead on the straightaways to put together a great time. And the hairpin leads on to one of the longest ones that we have here, and that's really your one of 2 passing opportunities on this track. So you got to make sure you're just as quick as possible through the hairpin, and if you have to, adjust the car for it as well, because that's going to be important come race time.
But Zach, that front straightaway is straight in name only. It sweeps to the right almost. So do you get the same draft that you would on another straightaway, or does that curvature of that straightaway? Listen to me, that's a contradiction of terms, but does that curvature affect your ability to draft?
No, that's a great question and a way to look at it. I mean, the draft is still there because you're getting high up in speed. So, I mean, even though that you're turning in, you're still, you know, sucking up on the guy in front of you. But, you know, I have a little bit of a bad history there in 2013 with Hawksworth and I. Our race ended about 200 feet after that bend there. So, I mean, it definitely makes it hard to defend as well because, you know, where you are in the corner, you can kind of adjust your line and say, well, hey, I needed that extra room when you're just trying to be protective.
As we said, you were in the booth with us for the weekend at St. Petersburg. I came away, especially in the second race. I think Spencer Pigot earned a lot of respect in that event because he did a really nice job holding off an experienced driver in that race, number 2, to get onto the spot.
And sometimes, you know, it's harder to hold somebody behind you than actually go for a pass because, you know, they have all the advantage. They know where you're fast and where you're slow at, and they're kind of just stalking you as a prey. So Spencer did an incredible job keeping himself in the position that he had. I mean, there's a little bit of difference in cars. His just wasn't working as well as he wanted it to. But like you said, he did an incredible job to keep the guy behind him and earn valuable points. We're early in the championship now, but every point's going to come down to it in every second place like 2014.
Max Chilton was the driver that we were talking about, and Max, of course, with a wealth of experience overseas, and he rebounded nicely after having some troubles in race number 1. Rob Howden.
Mark, just getting things underway here, obviously, for this session, but I talked about the experience level some of these drivers have here at the track. Only 3 drivers actually ever have raced here at Long Beach, but 2 drivers for Bilardi Auto Racing actually got a chance to go to the Dallara factory in Speedway, Indiana to get in that beautiful simulator they have. One of them was Felix Sorales. Sorales never been here before, but the simulator time he was able to log, obviously benefiting. He's at the top of the charts already, so for Sorales, just a little bit more familiarity with this racetrack getting on that Dallara sim.
Jake Query joins us in the booth, and Jake, 12 cars this weekend, but that's 1 down from St. Petersburg, and we have every reason to believe that those car counts are going to pick up as the season progresses, but be that as it may, as has often been the case over the past couple of years, while we don't have the depth in terms of numbers, we certainly have the depth in terms of talent. I thought all of these impressive rookies were just that impressive at St. Petersburg a couple of weeks ago.
No question about that. And I think, the way Carlin Racing came in this series and was able to flex their muscle a bit with Ed Jones and Chilton, I'm not going to say struggled race-wise, Mark, but let's face it, he qualified up front. One of the things I think that's going to be interesting to watch, and we made note of this in St. Petersburg, a guy like Max Chilton who comes over from Europe, who has Formula One experience, but yet rolling starts is something that is still an acclimation period for him. And I think we saw that. The first race in St. Petersburg, he got hung up a little bit. In addition, in the second race, I think he was still getting used to that. And what do we talk about with this series? It is, for all intents and purposes, one in which you're still trying to master the craft for the Verizon IndyCar Series. That's not to say a guy like Max Chilton isn't tremendously talented and qualified, but at the same time, there are nuances within this series that's what you're trying to work out and that's what you're trying to learn. One of the things also, Mark, that to me is interesting in my broadcast location in the turns here in Long Beach is right in between turns 1 and 6. Now that sounds odd, of course, but that means that I'm essentially sitting in the middle of Shoreline Drive. They go down to my left into turn number 1, and then once they work their way around the fountain, they are coming back opposite the direction that they would going into turn number 1, and there's a lefty that is turn number 6 before they go under what we call here the Tecate Walk Bridge. But when they make that left-handed turn, that's turn 6, Mark, if history is any indicator, that's one, regardless of whether we're talking about the Verizon IndyCar cars or these lights cars, where things can get a little bit tricky and in particular a little bit slick on the outside. So that's one of the things. Turn 6 always seems at some point in the course of a race to be a bugaboo, and I think is one area that drivers might want to try to figure out a familiar line. Zach, I don't know if you've noticed that in your experiences going around this circuit or not, but certainly from my non-driving but viewing an observation eye, that's one of the things I've always noticed.
For sure. That section for me has always been the trickiest one when I'm here, especially turn 5 and 6 is a combination, because 5, you have these really big yellow gator strips that we call them for the apex of the corner, so you're constantly trying to see how much of those that you can run over without upsetting the car and carrying that speed into turn 6. And as you run down that short chute and you get to turn 6, it's bumpy there in the brake zone. You're apexing off of a concrete wall, so you're kind of always figuring out how close you can get without touching that. I know I have touched it a couple times in the past. Then power down there, that's always a struggle because you're coming out all the way up from the Shoreline Drive on the exit, and it really falls off there with the crown in the road. So the thing always wants to get free, and you're just kind of battling it, trying to put the power down there as well.
Spencer Piggott is P1 at a 1:17.2766. Sorales, Kaiser, Pedrejito, your top 4. Harvey is 5th quick. Chilton, Jones, Brabham, Matthew, as we said, back in the 83 car this weekend. Then Anderson, Blackstock, and Ringel, and now all of a sudden Max Chilton decides he wants to take a turn at P1. His time 1:17.1249. Zach, Jack Harvey may not have had a car capable of winning either race over the weekend at St. Petersburg, but a very serviceable weekend. He understood his limitations and still managed to pile up some points.
For sure. Jack, he's kind of like a shark in the water, too. If we remember 2014, when Gabby and I came here to Long Beach, we just thought him and I were just going to have fun, and it was just us at the beginning stages of that, and Jack and his team with Schmidt-Peterson, they really just put their heads together and they just got quicker and quicker. And at Indy Grand Prix, I think is really when things came together for them, and they became a major factor in the races to come.
Zach, we talk a little bit of Paul Page and I talked a little bit about this course and the differences. Let's get back to this point in just a moment. Let's go down to Nick Yeoman. Nick, you have Brian Bellardi?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Mark, but we'll catch up with Brian Bellardi. 2 cars, of course, in the series with Felix Sorrells and Juan Pedrohita. You've crossed a lot of boxes off the checklist over the last couple years with a Freedom 100 win, a championship, and winning here a year ago with Gabby Chavez. How big was the win for this organization here a year ago?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, it was the 40th anniversary of Long Beach. Long Beach is a race I've I've been watching it forever, ever since I was a little kid. It was really important. I mean, I always talk to the team manager, John, about the fact that there's 2 that I definitely want to win. It's Long Beach and the Freedom 100. And we were able to check both those off last year, which was fantastic. Hopefully we didn't start the year with the way we wanted to, but we've got a strong car right now. The team has worked unbelievably hard the past couple of weeks, and we'll see where we go from here.
How tough is that as an owner? I mean, you win a championship a year ago, and I assume those expectations are through the roof, but with 2 new drivers, certainly Juan Pedrohita had his rookie year a year ago, but how tough is that to manage knowing that, hey, it's just going to take time to gel the drivers with the teams?
Well, it always takes a little bit of time. Unfortunately, we didn't get off to the start we wanted to due to an incident, which really, quite frankly, wasn't our fault. And on a double race weekend, things just start snowballing and going backwards. The race director reviewed it. There's a racing incident, which is fine. You have to pick and choose your moments when you really complain about things. I strongly disagree, however, but things started snowballing at that point in time at St. Pete. I mean, we did have very fast race laps. I mean, I think the second fastest race lap. It was a productive weekend. It just wasn't the success we were looking for. We started coming out of the gate.
Ryan, of course, talking about that incident with Max Chilton and Felix Sorrells. Let me ask you about that accident. Obviously, it puts your team behind the 8 ball with these brand new cars. How tough was that then preparing that car to race again the next day?
It was difficult. I mean, the team worked unbelievably hard. They had some huge hours in. It was definitely a long night. And like I said, once something like that happens, I mean, because I may not have looked big on TV, but it was a big, big hit. So hats off to the team. I mean, they just did a great job, and they're the best.
Let's talk about maybe moving up. Indycar, you got 2 cars in the Light Series, and I know that financially that is a big commitment. We've seen teams do it in the past. You've won the championship, you won the Freedom 100, as we talked about. Is advancing to the Verizon Indycar Series somewhere down the road in the future for this organization?
It is. It's certainly a goal of mine. I'm working with some partners right now back home. I've got some pretty good interest, but right now our focus obviously is on the Indy Lights season 2015, but there's no question that's a goal of mine, and hopefully we can make it happen sometime in the near future.
All right, appreciate the time. Brian Bellardi, the championship owner from a year ago. Mark, not a whole lot to report during pit lane. We have had a couple cars make their way back to the pits, but right now a lot of these drivers starting to learn this racetrack. Remember, the rest of the Mazda Road to Indy ladder system of USF 2000 and Pro Mazda, they don't race here at Long Beach. So for some of these drivers that have made the advancements, they're having to learn this racetrack as well. Brian Bellardi does have one, though, and Juan Pedrohita, who raced here 1 year ago. Well, let's go a little bit further down and check in with Rob Howden.
Sitting here right now with Kyle Kaiser. He's brought his Junkos Racing entry in. They got the front cowl off the car, so I'm expecting that we're going to make some kind of a change to the front end of the race car. Yeah, here come the engineers out to make an adjustment. Currently sitting in the 3rd spot. I think something that's important to bring out here when it talks about these Indy Lights cars, too. This is a brand new race car once again, and folks, we are here at one of the 3 temporary circuit races this year. Obviously, St. Petersburg, Long Beach, and of course then in June we go back to Toronto. Very interesting to see these drivers obviously having to get out here. The engineers, a brand new setup, obviously a baseline. They have no data at all in this race car on these street circuits. Every time they come here, it's really a blank slate.
Chilton is P1, Pickett, Harvey, Kaiser, and Jones your top 5. Zach, before we got to that interview with Brian Bellardi, I was going to ask you about the surfaces here, the surfaces anywhere for that matter. Sometimes we make much in the booth of the fact that you may go from asphalt to pavement. Some of that pavement may be painted, especially on street courses. What does that feel like in a race car? Can you actually feel that transition from asphalt to concrete?
Oh, definitely. With that is, the car grips on different surfaces better and a little less than others. So it's just a changing balance as you go through the corner. So it might handle one way on turn in. When you get to the apex, it might do completely different, and the exit's a whole new thing as well. But the one nice thing about Long Beach, a lot of the corners, the surfaces that you're going to have in it is consistent from the entry to the exit. It's not like a Toronto, per se, where you're going to enter on asphalt. You have those huge concrete patches in the center, and then you exit on asphalt as well. So here, a lot of the places, what you enter in on is what you're going to get throughout the whole corner, and it just makes it a little more consistent and easier for the drivers as well.
How about that curbing in Baltimore a couple of years ago? Can you feel that on the front straightaway?
Just a little bit, but not as much as those railroad tracks we had breaking cars in half.
That's right. That was it. What about, can you feel if the paint is pronounced? Like, for instance, here they have a rather sizable logo at the start-finish line, and I'm sure that's about as safest places you could have something like that. But unless it's wet, does that have any kind of an impact at all?
No, you can definitely feel it too, especially if you have them in the brake zones with the lines you have on normal city streets, or per se St. Petersburg when we were there, the big runway, you have the big paint stripes going at the ends of the runway. If you drag a tire over those, especially when you're trying to brake, it's an easy lockup for sure.
Matthew Brabham just went to P1, Mark, which I think is, look, this is a kid that had tremendous success moving his way up here into the lights. I think a year ago we probably anticipated would have more success than he had, and that's not a knock on him, Mark, but in terms of the wins translating into the Indy Lights, it's been somewhat of a struggle for Matthew Brabham, but now he comes back. He just announced, I believe it was within the last week or two, that he would definitively be here running in this particular event at Long Beach, and doing so with Andretti Autosport, and obviously he found something to his liking with that car, because right now Matthew Brabham finds himself, was P1, now P2. Spencer Pigot just took the fastest time so far. Nick Yeoman on pit road.
Yeah, here with Ryan Finney, who's a driver, a young man who raced here in Indy Lights at Long Beach, and I know kind of working on an IndyCar program as well. First of all, welcome back to Long Beach. Enjoying the weekend?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's not too far of a jaunt from home for me. About 30 minutes from Santa Monica, so it's convenient and it's great. And this has always been a killer venue. I'm happy to be back, and unfortunately not racing. But it seems to be a common story, or at least a commonality between a lot of drivers. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm working on an IndyCar program, and KB Racing's been a really big help, and I had a really great first test with them in Sebring a month and a half ago, and we're just kind of seeing where that leads at this point.
I'm a guy that likes to party a little bit. You have a sponsor, someone you've been hooked up with that's been supporting you, that I know certainly has been backing you. Is that going to be a factor in here with a potential IndyCar right down the road?
Yeah, I mean, my sponsor for the past 2 years has been Casamigos Tequila, and they haven't gone anywhere. And the thing that, regardless of the ownership of the company, it's a matter of how much the company can do at this time. And they're working on trying to put together a full program for me next year in IndyCar. And this year it wasn't in the cards with them, but luckily they brought on some other people to help me out. And there's been a lot of help trying to get me to the 500. And so between Casamigos and Tom Ford, I mean, we're hoping to make it there.
In terms of Indy Lights, you're a guy that ran some races in the old chassis. What do you think about this new Dallara?
I mean, this is the total right direction. The problem before was, and I can contest this, is driving the old car compared and then getting in the IndyCar. Oh my God! It was not even a night and day experience. It was just two different worlds. And this car is going to be a lot easier of a transition into the IndyCar. I think that they really did a fantastic job on this, and they took that kind of that old Atlantic spirit and they emulated that here. And the car shows it. The car's beautiful looking.
Well, it's good to see you this weekend. Enjoy the weekend, and certainly we're hoping to hear some good news soon.
Thanks, man. Yeah, hopefully Wednesday.
All right, that is Ryan Finney, IndyCar, Indy Lights driver. Got a chance to test an IndyCar, and Rob Howden. We're hoping to see some new names make their way up, and Ryan Finney might just be one of them.
Well, we're going to see if we see some new names up top here in Indy Lights as well, too, Nick. The Carlin drivers, Jones and Chilton. Jones, of course, who dominated St. Petersburg, now sitting third for Chilton, ninth for Jones. They're in pit lane here right now, and surprisingly, not getting really aggressive on making any changes to these race cars. As it sits right now, all they're doing, they're going to trim out the wings on Chilton a little bit. He sits P3, as we said, but again, no work on the springs, no work on the front or rear shocks either. Just some aero work here for the guys from Carlin.
1:15.77.15. Spencer Pigot is P1. Then Brabham, Chilton, Sorrellas, Anderson, Harvey, Kaiser, Jones, Pedrahita, Ringel and Blackstock. Jake?
I think the interesting thing here is the dichotomy between Chilton and Jones and what they've been able to turn out. Rob just talked about it. I mean, when you've got 3rd and 9th out of 12, leads you to believe, especially Jones, who was so fast in St. Pete and had such a firm control of that car, Mark, that you would have to guess that they are going 2 different setups here and just trying to see what works with the car. That's the advantage of having a teammate.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, as we were talking even in the IndyCar practice with the Penske's having 4 and Andretti having 3, you have these cars that you can go out and have one develop something else than others. Because with Matt and myself, we'd always kind of go out and I would be more of the qualifying car and Matt would be working on the race car setup, and that's just kind of our style. So we just allowed each other to build better cars on each end of the spectrum, and then once it came time to use each other's, we kind of just gave them little tips and advice of how it handles, and then they shipped us out and we put it to the test. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they're doing here, especially this being a first time here to Long Beach for the team there. So it's just a learning experience right now.
And I know the folks at Carlin were very, very respectful of the series and the talent in it throughout the course of the weekend, the dominance they had at St. Petersburg. But if they had any question, Zach, about the parity that exists, especially with this new chassis engine combination, I think they're seeing that on display here this weekend.
Definitely. I think Dallara and Mazda and Cooper Tires, they've done a great job to get the car where it is to right now, and I'm excited to see it only grow from here. Dan Anderson taking charge of Indy Lights the past year and this year, I think he's really turning it around to where it needs to be. It had a big following back in the day, and it was prestigious in a way, and I think that it's going to be back there, because I remember being a kid when I was 5, 6, 7 years old looking at the Indy Lights drivers and thinking, that's where I want to be, because I thought that was the only step to IndyCar. And now that we have this Mazda Road to Indy, you can start in USF 2000 to Pro Mazda, Indy Lights, IndyCar. I think this is the future, and we're seeing it right now.
When you were 5 or 6 years old, Jack, you make that sound like so long ago. Rob Houghton's on pit road. Rob?
That's awesome. Guys, the cool thing about this program, obviously we all probably a little bit worried about the fact that Carlin may be just a dominant team coming out of the box like they did in St. Petersburg. You look at the order right now, we have 4 different teams in the top 5 in the running order, the time order. Obviously, Juncos Racing looking very good. Kyle Kaiser and Spencer Pigot's running in that 1st and 2nd spot. But you've got 3 other teams in there as well. Of course, Carlin right there, Belardi in the hunt, and Schmidt-Peterson as well. So it's nice to see some parity here, at least in the opening of the 4 sessions we'll have here this weekend.
Rob, stay with us if you would. I don't know that we have, I think, accurately and effectively portrayed or given enough credit, I should say, maybe a better way of putting it is give enough credit to the folks from Cooper Tires. Let's face it, the previous tire manufacturer and supplier was actually a title sponsor of the series once upon a time, and some drivers were quite frankly a little concerned, those that were returning to the series, when it was announced that Cooper Tires would be on those cars. But it is clear that they had provided a quality product with the F2000 and Pro Mazda, and they certainly had done their homework before they ever put a tire on an Indy Lights car.
Yeah, these race car tires from Cooper are just absolutely fantastic. Obviously, very consistent throughout the race run, but what I do like about them as well is the drivers will tell you it does take a couple of laps for these tires to really come up to optimum operating temperature to get that real bit of a grip in there. So we're putting the onus on these drivers to be able to kind of tiptoe around in the first couple of laps. Yeah, we want consistency, we want great grip, but I like the fact that these drivers are challenged too, especially early in the qualifying sessions. I'm sure that Zach can attest to that.
For sure. The one thing with the Coopers that we didn't have with the Firestones is just, the car feels a little bit lighter, so you're definitely throwing the thing around a lot more and you're chasing it through the corners. So if one thing it does teach you is how to tiptoe around, how to be right on that knife's edge and push it a little bit further to get the ultimate time out of it. So I think Cooper's doing a great job of developing young drivers and teaching us the things we need to really know to make a difference once we do get our chance in the big show.
It's Kaiser, Piggott, Anderson, Sorrellis, and Brabham, your top 5. Chilton, Anderson, Harvey, Jones, Pedrahita, Ringel, and Blackstock. Is what Matthew Brabham is doing, particularly this weekend, does it speak to the level of this kid's talent, Zach? Because let's face it, a long off season of certainty for him. Didn't get in a race car until the very last minute before St. Pete. more uncertainty coming into this weekend, and yet he's still able to run in the top 5 in this session.
Yes, Matt's doing a great job, and being his teammate last year, I've got just a lot of time with him and to see the kind of driver and type of person he is. And I'll be the first to say that Matt's a great friend of mine as well. And for him to come in here, it's a big taking on as well. Andretti only had one car through preseason testing to really develop the package, so Matt jumping in is really going to help them leapfrog and get ahead in a way with his experience. But I'm glad to see where he's at right now, pushing the car, but I think it's only a matter of time before we see him up front, because that's where he wants to be.
And much like guys like Graham and Marco, there is that famous last name that he carries. Of course, his father Jeff, his uncle David, and of course his grandfather Sir Jack Brabham, all legendary names, that Brabham name in motorsports.
We're
Back
going to
to
have
pit
to
road and Rob Howden.
Thank you very much, Mark. Standing here right now with the Director of Development Series for IndyCar, Jason Penix, and I think, like Jason, like Dan Anderson, there's a bunch of people that are just thrilled to see this brand new Dallara IL-15 on the track here at Long Beach. Obviously a historic event, the street circuit, but to see this new car that had so much work put into it here at Long Beach, it's got to be a great feeling.
Absolutely, a fantastic machine, as you said, and fantastic event here with a lot of history. We're really happy to be here with a brand new car. We hope it's exciting for the fans and really showcases what Indy Lights is all about.
Great to watch the guys come through. Obviously, you work with the development series. You watch these kids like a Sage Karam, like a Zach Veach, Spencer Piggott, come all the way from USF 2000, Pro Mazda. Now to see them kind of excel here in Indy Lights, that's got to be so fulfilling as well.
Oh, absolutely. We have a great track record of guys graduating here from Indy Lights, moving up to the IndyCar series, and so that's important for us as well. And so, we're really happy with the steps that we have and the pace and transition that everybody's making as they graduate up the ladder. It's fantastic.
Being told that there's a red flag on track right now, Ethan Ringel in the wall into the tires actually in turn number 8, so into a red situation. Jason Peggs, thank you very much for being with us, but what we're seeing in USF 2000 and Pro Mazda now, the future of Indy Lights is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. There's tremendous talent from top to bottom, and every year I feel like the field gets stronger and stronger, and so the Mazda Road Indy program is definitely doing what it's supposed to do.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Jason Penix, folks, he's been around these guys for a long time.
I think it's interesting in listening to Jason talk and listening to Rob. Zach, I wanted your thought on this. When you look at the Mazda Road to Indy, and you're essentially talking about a 3-step process up into the Verizon IndyCar Series, which is the biggest adjustment to go from which level to which level? Is there the greatest variation of the car?
For me, it was Indy Lights. With USF 2000 and Pro Mazda, really the only thing that you're changing there is your mid-corner speed. A little faster on the straightaway, but you're just getting more downforce in the Pro Mazda cars, so that's allowing you to go quicker through the corner. But for me, and I say this too, I learned the most in Indy Lights, because that's when you step into a car that the wings are actually producing a lot of downforce. Engineering is a tremendous part of Indy Lights.
Yeah, how much are you dealing with the car? I hate to say fighting with the car, but manipulating the car and constantly having it keep you humble, I would think,
especially in the old car. I mean, the driver would cause 99% of the problems that thing had, and you had to adjust yourself to drive through the 3 different stages you would get through it in a race. So, I mean, just as far as what my knowledge going into IndyCar, I feel like Indy Lights really prepared me for that, because that's when you're working at an IndyCar level with teams, engineers, and, at these tracks as well.
Mark, when I think about guys learning, like Zach, from Lights into the IndyCar, Long Beach jumps out to me because, and Zach had made reference to it here, as we're under a red flag for the incident on track in turn number 8 with Ethan Ringel. Jack Hawksworth a couple of years ago, I remember when he was starting up front and really made no bones about it, saying, look, in turn 1, I'm either coming out of that with the lead or I'm going to be out of the race. Well, he was out of the race. And things kind of went downhill for him a little bit there. Eventually, I think he learned from that, but knowing just kind of when to go for it, when to back off. I think we've seen that from a number of different guys over the years.
Well, you said it too, Jake. Indy Lights has a way of keeping you humble. So, you start to think that you got to head over someone, or especially in this car, that has a way of making you really kind of respect the series that you're in and the car that you're in, because if you make a mistake in one of these cars at Long Beach or, say, Indianapolis or a short oval, I mean, these really let you know how costly it can be, because we're almost IndyCar speeds at places. You're getting high on that level where you want to make sure all the crashing is behind you, because now it hurts.
How demanding is this track physically? I mean, I know Baltimore was one where there was a lot of physical demand from it. You talked about the railroad tracks and other such things, but in terms of the bumps in holding onto the car, how demanding as Long Beach?
I'd say this is one of the more demanding tracks, but the nice thing about Long Beach is such that long curved straightaway that you have. So you do have that chance to rest every little bit, but the thing is, once you get into turn one, that quick left into the fountain corner, and then you got the back-to-back right-handers, I mean, that's really keeping you on your toes. You kind of hold your breath through that whole section, because when you're getting it right through there, you're almost just touching the wall every time you apex off.
We are under a red flag condition, a single car incident involving Ethan Ringel. He put it into the tire barriers in turn number 8. So, Zach, you talk about, Jake talks about how physically demanding that Long Beach is, and all of the tracks are demanding in their own way. And we touched on it a bit at St. Petersburg with you, and for those that may not have heard it, joined us. You give a lot of credit for the success that you had last year. Just the commitment that you made in the off-season before last when you started working with the folks at PitFit.
Yeah, no, PitFit training, Jim Leo there, and my trainer for the Mazda Road Indy guys, Alex Waney, they're just a great group of guys, and they really get it. I mean, you start making mistakes in a race car when you get tired, and you can't have that at this level because everybody's trying to be in the best shape that they can. And for me, putting on weight changed my season. I've already put on about 15 pounds trying to get ready for Indycar, so I'm just repeating the process to get myself ready for the big show, hopefully.
Well, we're hoping that here within a few moments we can get back to green flag conditions here. They've taken that car behind the wall now. It'll go back to the paddock for the necessary repairs, and we see the track workers working very, very hard to get that tire barrier reset. We've got Kaiser, Piggott, Anderson, Chilton, and Sorrellis, your top 5. Then Harvey, Brabham, Anderson, Jones, Pedrahita, Ringel, and Blackstock. Zach, we're going to go ahead and cut you loose a little early. You'll be back with us here tomorrow as we get ready to go practice and qualifying, and then for the race on Sunday. Appreciate you joining us. Zach traveled with us yesterday, and his good friend Sage Karam left him hanging at the airport, and we had to give him a ride.
No, I definitely appreciate that. I think the highlight of us traveling together was me getting carted to set in an exit row. So,
that's right.
People not thinking that I'm 15. But I do appreciate you guys having me in. I got to run. I'm changing with two-seater duty this weekend as well, so I got to get suited up and have a little bit of fun while I'm out here in Long Beach.
We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks again.
Right,
we appreciate it. That's Zach Veach joining us in the booth. And Zach has some news on the horizon that he's working on, and of course didn't go into details because that's just bad luck to do that, Jake. Guys don't ever go into specifics, and hopefully things will come together very, very soon, and we'll see Zach Veach back in a race car in some form. And Jake, we've told him at St. Petersburg that good things have a tendency to happen to people that hang around IndyCar radio. We've seen it with Stefan Wilson and Pippa Mann and Sage Karam, and now hopefully that'll happen with Zach Veach. Nick Yeoman.
We're about 1 minute from getting the engines fired back up here on pit lane. Rob Houghton and I were actually talking during the cleanup that a lot of guys have hit the wall at Long Beach. It's happened to just about everybody. Standing with Ethan Ringel, walk us through what exactly happened.
Well, it's my first time here, and it's just my first day ever actually in California. So what I was doing was just trying my best to push my braking zones everywhere, and I think I made a little bit successful improvement in turn 1 and up to that corner. But that corner in particular, I think it's corner 6, the wall on the exit gets really close, and I just pushed my braking zone just one car length too far for myself, and just a little bit of understeer, and that just caught me off guard. So it wasn't that hard of a hit, and it's a quick fix on the car. It's just a front wing and a left corner, but I'll be back tomorrow, and I'm going to correct the problem.
Enjoy it here in California. That's Ethan Ringel. Tough break during this practice session, but Mark, everybody out here learning, and Ethan Ringel going to do that a little bit later tomorrow when these guys get to practice again.
We are back to green flag conditions now after that 7 minutes of red flag time. Piggott, Anderson, it's Chilton, Sorrellis, and Harvey, your top 6, and Brabham, Anderson, Jones, Pedrahita. Ringel was 11th quick with a time of 1:16.8668. Then Blackstock, the 12th car of the 12 in terms of timing and scoring. Kaiser, by the way, Jake, his quick circuit so far, 1:15.2522.
How about the team, if you will? Yukos Racing right there, 1-2 right now. We saw the dominant performance from Carlin Racing in St. Petersburg. Both Chilton and Jones were so fast right off the truck, really, when we were in Florida. Right now, Jones finds himself 9th on the speed chart. Chilton now has moved up to 4th. But in terms of Kaiser and Pickett, you never know. Perhaps it just so happens that they are in a faster trim than are the other teams. But right now, Nick, that team of Kaiser and Pickett standing 1-2 on the speed chart.
And I'm glad you brought up trim, Jay Query, because I actually saw during that red flag, the 18 of Kyle Kaiser, they actually laid that rear wing back a little bit. So, so far, so good in this session at the top of the charts, as you guys mentioned, with his teammate Spencer Pickett. Glad to see with 9 minutes to go here in this session, they're getting an opportunity to push a little bit harder, going a little bit more aggressive on that setup. So Kyle Kaiser looking to improve on that quick time.
Not done for the day. Once we're done with this session at 2:15, we'll rejoin you at 3:45 Pacific time. That's 6:45 Eastern. I'll be in the booth with Paul Page, with Nick and Jake on pit road. Scott Dixon was quick in the session today. Session number 1 at 12:30 local time. Kanan, Hunter Ray, Pagano, and Will Power, your top 5. And Jake, we'll touch on the Verizon IndyCar Series briefly. Going back to even before the season finale, Tony Kanaan is one guy that I think seems to have a little bit of momentum, and I think TK could figure prominently into the championship hunt by season's end.
I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I think it's very obvious that the guys at Penske, with the new aero kits and the work that they've done, Montoya, Pagano, Power, Castroneves, pretty tough quartet. But Kanaan, I thought of that same thing, Marcus. I'm walking up pit road, and of course, the way that they are laid out here would be based on points, because there wasn't qualifying at New Orleans because of the weather there, and they started on points, so you would do so here as well. And there's Kanaan all the way towards the end, so you think, you know what, this is a guy that is right in the thick of things, and certainly we know what he's going to be able to do in terms of his competitive level at Indianapolis, whether it be in the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, the Angie's List Grand Prix of Indy, or the Indianapolis 500-mile race. The other thing that comes into play for both of these series, I think, Mark, here in Long Beach, and I seem to mention this every year because every year I kind of forget about it, and then once you get out on pit road, I marvel over it, and that is how narrow, probably of any circuit that we go to over the course of the season, the pit road here, in terms of the amount of room a team has to work with and move back and forth in a pit stall, is more narrow here than anywhere. Really doesn't come into play because you have everything out there, but should, in the event of an unlikely emergency, you need to bring anything from the transporter area into your team, it is so narrow with fans, media, people taking pictures and everything else, it can get bottlenecked very, very quickly on the pit road here in Long Beach. Speaking of that pit road, that's where Rob Howden is right now.
Long Beach, such a unique race on the circuit here for the Mazda Road to Indy. Standalone, no USF 2000, no Pro Mazda. So none of our young drivers working their way up the Mazda Road to Indy have ever been here before. That's what makes this race so unique. And it's very interesting to see the driver running in third spot right now, R.C. Enerson for Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. Not only has he never been here in USF 2000 or Pro Mazda, he's never been in a Pro Mazda car. A USF 2000 driver for 3 years, last couple of years, made the big jump up here to Indy Lights, and now running P3. He has got to be very pleased, him and the entire team, with the development of this young driver.
Let's stay with you, Rob Howden. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about it earlier with Zach Veach. A pretty impressive drive in race number 2 by Spencer Pickett. I mean, he had a guy with all kinds of experience in Max Chilton, who was relentless in his pursuit. And I think a lot of folks had to come away impressed with Spencer Pickett, the show that he put on to hold on to that position.
Spencer Pickett, one of the winningest drivers of this Mazda Road to Indy, graduating through USF 2000 up to Pro Mazda and into Indy Lights. I think the transition with his team, Juncos Racing, obviously really good for him. Kept him with that comfort level. He knows the guys he's working with. And here's a guy for all the way through his career, from karting all the way up the ranks. He's won races. He knows how to win. He's got a burning desire to do so. And I think being able to hold back Max Chilton was a huge boost of confidence for the young driver out of Florida. Piggott, in his obvious rookie year here, running with that sponsorship from Mazda Speed after winning the Pro Mazda Championship, he really could be a contender for this championship if the momentum and the confidence continues as it did in St. Petersburg.
Rob, too many times we focus on this Mazda Road to Indy ladder series, and we talk about driver development, and of course, with 5 minutes remaining in the session now, we're aware of the crew development. But look at Juncos Racing. That that speaks to the bigger picture in terms of the development and seeing teams move up eventually to Indy Lights and then maybe IndyCar as well.
Well, you talk about Bilardi Auto Racing. They were a USF 2000 team to start. They transfer up into Indy Lights, and then Nick talked with Brian, and they're looking at going Verizon IndyCar Series racing. I would not be surprised to see the same thing happen with Juncos Racing. They were a karting team back in the day with Spencer Peggott. They come into Pro Mazda. They won a number of championships in Pro Mazda with Connor Daly, with Spencer Peggott. Now here they are in Indy Lights. The team's looking good. Maybe the next step for Ricardo Juncos is to follow Brian into the Verizon IndyCar Series. That would be even more of a Mazda road to Indy.
And I'll tell you what, in terms of the depth of teams, Rob and Mark, that we're seeing in this series right now, we see it once again. Carlin Racing, you knew it wouldn't take them long before they found that speed. And indeed, Max Chilton now the fastest here at a 114.693. So Chilton finds himself number one on the speed chart, then Kaiser Piggott, and then Sorrells, Harvey, and Anderson rounding out the top six. Mark.
Qualifying record set by Carlos Munoz. He did that in 2013 with a time of 1:12.9374. The fastest lap of the race was turned by Connor Daly back in 2011 at 1:13.8995. And Jake, I must admit, over the past several years, it's been exciting covering this series, and now that we have that total umbrella in place, it's even more fascinating to watch the development of these drivers. I mean, we look up and down right now as the time and speed report for the Verizon IndyCar Series session is right here in front of us in the booth still. I mean, Marco Andretti, his career not quite as long in Indy Lights, if you will, but you look at the likes of Munoz and Saavedra and Chavez and Kimball and Newgarden and Hinch and all of those guys. It's just very rewarding for us to have the opportunity to cover all these series and see it come to fruition and pay off for these drivers.
Well, I think the other thing you're seeing is you are seeing more parity among the teams. I mean, I know not to belabor that point, but Mark, think about last year with Bilardi. I mean, what turned out to be a great championship with Jack Harvey narrowly missing out and Gabby Chavez getting that points championship. But he did so because credit to Brian Bilardi and his guys at Bilardi Autosport. They, from the time they rolled off the truck in St. Petersburg, from an engineering standpoint with the Cooper tire, they were able to figure out that balance and get Chavez out to such a good start that once Harvey really came around and kind of got things figured and dialed out, Bilardi Autosport, their homework, their offseason paid off for them. Now you have not only that, but you got Carlin Racing coming in and showing that they are strong right off of the truck. Juncos Racing, as we see with Spencer Piggott, who has been so dominant in this latter series, moving up and obviously shows a natural ability to get in these cars. In addition to that, Mark, new car. So it's brand new equipment all the way across the board for everybody. So even playing field from day one. And I think what we are seeing is the possibility that at each and every venue we may see one of 2 or 3 or 4 different teams that it happens to be their weekend, that particular weekend.
About 90 seconds remaining in this session. Chilton continues at P1 with a time of 1:14.4110. Then Kaiser, Piggott, Harvey, and Sorrells your top 5. Brabham, Jones, Pedrejita, Anderson, Enerson, Blackstock, and Ringel. Ringel brings out the lone red flag period of the session. He found the tire barrier in turn number 8. We heard from him. He said it's mainly bolt-on stuff, and it should be a quick fix. And an abbreviated schedule for the lights today, Jake. This is the only session they'll have. Then they'll have a session bright and early at 9:15 in the morning, and then get ready to go qualifying at 12:55. These are Pacific times, and you talk about early risers. That lights race is scheduled to go off at 8:35 Pacific time. That's the earliest I can remember them being on track, say for Toronto a couple of years ago when they qualified at 8:80.
Well, but here's the thing. The hotels here are in the middle of course, this is a street course, so it's using the streets of Long Beach, California. Shoreline, Pacific, Ocean, all of those. The hotel where most of these teams are staying right in the middle of that track. Now, you get the Pirelli World Challenge cars going off at like 7:30 in the morning, Mark, so even if you had thought you might sleep in, you might as well go ahead and schedule a race because you don't need an alarm clock, right? That comes very, very quickly. Nick Yeoman?
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I was up at 5:30 running on the beach this morning anyway. So, yeah, it doesn't seem that bad when you consider if you just change those times over to Eastern times and thinking about it as an 11:45 race time. But I'm interested. Yeah, I mean, that's, that practice session tomorrow morning, I think that might be when we really find out as the checkered flag is out on this only practice session of the day. I think tomorrow morning's practice session is going to be pretty intriguing because those lap times, Mark, are probably going to be the closest you're going to see in terms of the cool track temperatures that we're going to see for race day on Sunday. So this session is great for these guys to get a lot of seat time, but I think tomorrow we're going to see some trimming out and we're going to see quite a bit more speed.
We'll see if Nick and Rob can wait patiently for these drivers to complete that cool down lap and make their way onto pit road, and we will try to get a driver or two anyway. New fast lap of the session. Chilton really hits his stride right before the checkers falls. The time 1:14.1813. That's the fast lap of the session. Then Spencer Pigot, then Kaiser, then Sorrellis, then Harvey, your top 5. Brabham ended up 6th quick in the 83 machine. Then Ed Jones, the guy who swept the doubleheader weekend in St. Petersburg. Then Anderson, Pedrahita, Anderson, Blackstock, and Ringel. As we mentioned, Ringel brought out 7 minutes of red time when he found the tire barrier in turn number 8. We talked about a tight schedule for the lights. The Indycar Series, Verizon Indycar Series, will roll off at 10 o'clock Pacific tomorrow. And then they'll go qualifying with the knockout format and the Firestone Fast 6 at 1:55. They will have a final warm-up session at 10 a.m. Pacific on Sunday and then get ready to go racing at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Still one more IndyCar practice session yet to go today. That one will roll off at 3:45. We'll have it for you. It's a 45-minute session, and it will last until 4:30 p.m. Pacific. For those of you that can't do the math and you're on the East Coast listening to us, you can join us at 6:45 for that session. As we mentioned, Scott Dixon ended up P1. His teammate Tony Kanaan was P2. Then Ryan Hunter-Ray, Simon Pagenaud will power your top 5. Bourdais, Montoya, Munoz, Castro Neves, and Hawksworth the top 10. Jake?
Ran into a gentleman at the airport yesterday coming out to watch Spencer Pigot. He owns the Stutz building in downtown Indianapolis. They are one of the sponsors. The Stutz building, of course, where the Stutz automobile was built in Indianapolis. Of course, at that time it would have been the northwest side. But
I had a battery-powered Stutz Bearcat as a kid.
Very cool cars, no question about it. And now that building itself serves housing essentially art galleries and has festivals that take place there. But there's a long-standing history between drivers and Stutz. Harry Stutz used to be one of those who would actually house and host drivers. Jules Gu in 1913, for example, in Indianapolis when the 500-mile race was taking place. So a long history with the Stutz and racing, and the Stutz actually is one of those that's on board with Spencer Pigot. He happens to be with Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, and it's a nice-looking logo on the rear engine cowling. Jules Gu, of course, if you didn't know, is Jake Query's favorite Indianapolis 500 winner. Little trivia, keep that in mind. Let's grab Spencer Pigot quickly for a quick word. Ends up second in that practice session. I know there's a lot of learning to do here today in such a short time, but how'd the session go?
Session went really well. It's my first time here at Long Beach, the team's first time, so happy to be here. It's a great track, and yeah, just continue to keep learning. I mean, the Mazda number 12 car has been pretty good that session, but I think we've got some more things to try and change, and we can hopefully catch the guy in front.
All right, a good practice session, Rob Howden for Juncos Racing. You're with his teammate.
Yeah, Juncos drivers 2, 3, Kyle Kaiser. You're going to be pretty happy. You were up on top there for a while. Your first time on the racetrack. That's always interesting, isn't it? This is your first time to get all the visual cues, the understanding of speed, the grip. Give me a little run through how your session went.
Yeah, it went really well. Really started off just getting my references and everything because the only thing I've had is simulator time. So just really see if the references were accurate and then start pushing little by little, get comfortable. And I was pretty comfortable carrying a lot of speed in the beginning, and we ended up pretty well. But we have a lot of changes and a lot of things we're going to work on.
Kyle, obviously this is about comfort at this racetrack here. You come in with a lot of wing dialed into the car, a lot of downforce. Did you guys do a little trimming during the session?
Yeah, we did. I felt like we had a little too much downforce because I wasn't really getting loose anywhere. So we're probably slowly going to start trimming it out until we start feeling the car moving around.
P3, great session.
Yeah, thank you.
Well done. Let's go back to Nick Yeoman.
And the man at the top of the charts is Max Chilton. He ends up the session P1. Max, what do you think of this race course? You were certainly fast, but how did the learning experience go here?
Yeah, it was nice to be racing in California again. I've only raced here once at Laguna, but this track, it's actually quite a nice street course, to be honest. It's a shame that it hasn't been surfaced and got rid of the bumps. because then it would be a really fast-flowing circuit. But that's the way it is. I think good job. I've never been here before, and at the moment we're the quickest by 4/10, I believe. So good job by the team, considering they've got no experience here.
You seem to me, you're a California guy, aren't you? You like it out here?
It's nice. I like the sun, and I like beaches. So hopefully we can win on Sunday and head to the beach.
All right, a good first session for Max Chilton. He put that Carlin Racing machine, Mark Janes, at the top of the charts.
Next session for the lights, 9:15 Pacific tomorrow. Next session for the IndyCar, 3:45 Pacific today. The director of the IMS Radio Network is Wally Levitt. Our on-site producer is Rick Evans. Thanks to Rob Howden and Nick Yeoman for all of their work in the pits. We also want to thank Zach Veach for joining us in the booth. I'm Mark Janes. For Jake Query, so long for now from the streets of Long Beach, California.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his fourth 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment.
And we await A.J. Foyt along with a host of others, including Tony Holman, who is cheering as loudly as the crowd. We've seen what has never been seen before.
Verizon IndyCar Series on IndyCar Radio.
And history is matched as the twin checkered flags come out for our second four-time winner of the Indianapolis 500, Al Unser. Roberto Guerrero comes across the line, finishing 4.4 seconds back. The Penske team scores another victory. Al Unser has won the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
A.J. Foyt now coming down to the white line in turn number 2. He looks kind of happy as he goes through 2 onto the backstretch, and in just a second he'll
program check 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Roger Howdy in the end, the backstretch all to himself. Here he comes, A.J. Foyt, number 1, entering up toward that northeast turn, the big wave.
Jake 1-2 on program 1-2-1-2.
And Mikey Hurt.
We got him here. People waving their hands, waving to him, and he waves back as he takes the turn number 3. One more turn to go to Jim Shelton.
And he's in this turn right now. White car, big goal number 1, happy A.J. There you have what looks like our winner, and I don't think he can miss now. He has about half a straightaway to go, and here's Sid Collins.
Well, nothing should happen now, and here comes the car, the Sheraton Thompson Special, the checkered flag for A.J. Foyt. With the right hand up in the air, waving to the crowd, the winner of the 1964 500-mile race.
And there the checkered flag waving, and Mary Rose is the winner. Rose is the winner of the 31st running of the Indianapolis 500-mile Motor Speedway Classic.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network. on the IMS Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his fourth 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment.
And we await A.J. Foyt along with a host of others, including Tony Holman, who is cheering as loudly as the crowd. We've seen what has never been seen before, beginning with a woman driving in the field in the morning and A.J. finishing 4 up front at Indianapolis. Headed into victory lane now, A.J. Foyt in the gleaming Gilmore 14 Coyote, the Gilmore Racing Team home, and he wins again.
And there's the checkered flag for Mark Donahue, winner of the 1972 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Oh my goodness, we have 7, 8, 10 cars in a pack headed for one Jerry.
Well, you talk about the crowd getting on their feet. They do. So far, so good. They are nose to tail, a little bit of room. There's about an 8-car pack in front of Gary Lee right now.
Yeah, and in that pack, second place and third place. Little Al has gotten around Jack Villeneuve. He's back up to second, and now 2 cars separate second and third. Mr. Excitement is that youngster, that second-generation driver. We're impressed with Jack Villeneuve, but right now he's dropped to third. And there's Al Unser Jr., and then Bobby Rahal. Jack Villeneuve goes on the outside. He goes on. You can't go too wide in the turns. They're doing it today.
They sure are coming through 4. Now they go single file. Maybe they got a little scared last time. Who knows? But going through 4 this time, everybody single. They come toward the main straightaway and Bob Jenkins.
That was just a breathtaking moment.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network. This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now, perfectly aligned, back on the main straightaway to call the start of the greatest spectacle in racing, the voice of the 500, Paul Page.
Oh, they came off of turn 4 beautifully. They look for the green flag. The green flag is out. And from the center of the road, James Hinchcliffe pulls away. Howard tried to duck over behind him, but Hinchcliffe is in front.
They must have found something with that car because he was not happy with the balance, not happy with the amount of horsepower he could have during that first run. Marco slides that bright yellow and blue Snapple car into pit lane. The fueler will engage the hose and the 4 tire changers will go to work. Marco has charged to the front. His grandfather won in 1969. A good pit stop for Andretti as he exits pit lane.
Hunter Ray slung past on the inside of Ed Carpenter. Marco Andretti in third, then Scott Dixon, Elio Castroneves. That's the front 5 in the turn number 3, Mark James.
Not sure on restarts that up front is the place to be because of what happens with the slipstream, if you will. Ed Carpenter right there. Marco Andretti, then Scott Dixon, then Elio Castroneves. Front 5 set sail for the north end.
Hunter Ray trying to draft Carpenter going into 1.
And Carpenter on the outside. Ryan Hunter Ray on the inside. Hunter Ray will make the pass again. And Marco Andretti stays in the number 3 spot. He made one number 2.
Guys, Will Power, Ed Carpenter, Marco Andretti. Power beats him out of pit lane. So it's Power, Marco Andretti, Ed Carpenter, followed by J.R. Hildebrand.
And Hunter Ray darts in, moves to the outside as they get the white flag. 1 to go, Jerry.
They are side by side. Elio looks to the outside. Elio will have to take the number 2 spot. He's right on the rear wing of Ryan Hunter Ray.
Hunter Ray looking for number 1. Elio Castroneves looking for win number 4. Ryan Hunter Ray, 8 car lengths in front as they move in the backstretch for the final time.
And Elio makes the move. 3 laps too early. Does he have anything at all left in the tank? A couple of turns to go. Ryan Hunter Ray leads in Indy.
Turn number 800 is upon us. Less than a car length is the difference. The final turn. Hunter Ray to call the finish. The voice of the 500, Paul Page.
And it is Ryan Hunter Ray that is going to lead Elio Castroneves across the line. Ryan Hunter Ray has his first Indianapolis 500-mile race win. Elio Castroneves will have to wait for another year to get his 4th victory at the Indy 500.
This is Indycar Radio on the IMS Radio Network. Indycar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
John Andretti starts to close into the back of Mansell. So John Andretti, who will drive 2 races in one day, is having one incredible drive here this morning. John Andretti strong, trying to run down the line. Nigel Mansell, a very quiet month. And look here, they almost go 3 wide. Now they get down into single file. And Robbie Gordon now running strong. He had some handling problems early, but Robbie moving up through the field.
As they head through 4, the big battle right now, Boycel clears traffic and gets through very safely. And everyone again making it through 4 as they head toward 1 and Jerry Baker.
Well, Mansell's found some running room all by his lonesome. Now we were watching Eddie Cheever. Man, he appears to be really flying out there. Oh, we got a bad crash in 1. 2 cars are gathering. We've got a quick flash fire. It is out. Cars dive to the inside. One of the cars up against the outside wall dodges the crash. They are side by side just as we come out of number 1.
Less than half a lap ago. Brody Johncock by 5 car lengths over Rick Mears. They're in the north short chute. Here they come. This is the final quarter lap. Johncock maintains the lead. The voice of the 500, Paul Page. Who's going to win it?
Gordon Johncock off the 4th turn. Mears is right behind him. Johncock. Mears makes a try. Johncock wins it by less than 1/10 of a second. Gordon Johncock has won his second 500. Rick Mears comes across in second place, almost side by side. And you should see the celebration that is taking place in the Patrick Racing pits. An incredible celebration now as they run down toward victory lane. What a finish!
Let's see what happens with the 68. He's going to climb the fence. He is out of the car, and Helio Castroneves climbs the fence in the front straight.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
And we welcome you back to Long Beach, California, the Verizon Indycars for their second practice session as they lead up to the race here, the Grand Prix on Sunday. It'll be this practice session, then another one tomorrow morning, qualifying on Saturday afternoon, the warm-up on Sunday morning, and then the race on Sunday afternoon. The first cars have headed out onto the track, led by Juan Montoya in the number 2 car, and his teammate Will Power came out right behind him. So the Penske organization apparently wants to get a clear track. Let's go down first to the pits and start with Jake Query.
You know, Paul, when you're talking about those that have gone out here, the first car out of this track, probably the most zealous, would be that of Graham Rahal. That's because they had a very limited and fractured early practice session here. They had a gearbox line failure in that number 15 Steak and Shake machine of Graham Rahal and Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. As a result, limited laps. They only had one circuit around this track, or one series, if you will, of laps before they noticed the problem, brought it in. They believe they have it fixed, but obviously that means this becomes of paramount importance for them to collapse in what you would normally do in 2 practice sessions. Graham Rahal is going to have to do that in 1. Further down pit road, also mailing this afternoon for this session here in Long Beach, is Nick Yeoman.
Thank you very much, Jake Query. 6 cars so far have not gone out on the racetrack. That's Sebastian Bourdais, Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, Luca Filippi, Marco Andretti, and Ryan Hunter-Reay. The rest of the field, though, has gone out on the racetrack, including Gabby Chavez, who just looped it around, and he has continued going. As far as the conditions are going, a lot warmer than what we saw this morning. This morning, the ambient temperature was up around 71 degrees, or 74 degrees Fahrenheit. The ambient temperature now up around 82, and the track temperature is quite warmer as well. We saw track temperatures around 114 degrees. Now the track temperature up around 121. So the sun-splashed California sky, Paul, beating down on everybody down here on pit lane as it warms up. for this final practice session of the day.
Well, it feels good, doesn't it, though, Nick? This is a great day. We always enjoy coming to Long Beach, California, and this event that in many ways actually made Long Beach. It was not the greatest of cities, pretty run down along Ocean Boulevard, and when they first started this race, and now it's a thriving city with all kinds of beautiful new buildings, many still under construction. It's a great place for the Indy cars to come race every year. Mark James is alongside as we're beginning to see our first times come in. Power, Hawksworth, Rahal, Montoya, Pagno, Castro Neves, and Rahal have all recorded times.
And they're chasing the likes of Tony Kanaan and Scott Dixon. Those are the guys that were fast in the session today and earlier today, and we expect similar times and speeds. They might quicken just a little bit. We are a little bit later in the day, but that track continues to get rubbered up, if you will, is one of the phrases that we have coined over the years after several sessions throughout the course of this weekend. Pretty uneventful, that first session, Paul, knock wood. Luca Filippi had some front-end damage after a visit to the outside retaining wall, and other than that, a couple of cars in the runoff area, and that was about it.
Well, the 98 car, that's Gabby Chavez, ran off in turn 6, got going right away again, or at least after a little interval. We'll look to make sure that he actually got back on course and is able to make it all the way back to the pits. Now, Indycar, since we last talked, Mark, made some rulings that have to be implemented by Sunday. One has to do with those, what I call the table wings on the front of the Chevrolet, those wings that have a tall vertical and a little horizontal airfoil.
Yeah, it's IndyCar continuing to be proactive, according to the release we received from the Director of Communications, Mike Kitchell. They're committed to delivering an entertaining on-track product. There have been some concerns after all of the caution periods that we had at St. Petersburg and a couple of issues we had with debris coming off of cars. The first step of the process began with last week's structural upgrades. In other words, Paul, they just wanted to make them a little more stout. They didn't want them to fly off quite as easily. Now, Chevrolet has been told to add a tether to the winglets or remove the winglets from its front wing assembly. Honda is to implement additional reinforcements to their rear wheel guard, and that all had to be done prior to race day on Sunday. And Nick Yeoman, you picked it up earlier today. Chevrolet haven't seen a tether yet. We did see some adjustments though to that front wing assembly.
Yeah, as Paul mentioned, those upright winglets have disappeared from that the front wing, and the main thing, as you mentioned, it was just about safety. I mean, so many times we saw during that St. Petersburg race, those very thin pieces of carbon fiber were sheared off and certainly created some dangerous situations for these drivers running through that. Of course, we've seen in the past drivers getting hit by debris in the cockpits, and that's the last thing we wanted to see. So, yeah, it was noticeable down here on pit lane, and honestly, I think it's probably the right move because that's the last thing we want to see is any type of debris being flung up. So it's good to see IndyCar and Chevrolet, Honda as well, being very proactive in making sure that we can continue having exciting and safe racing.
And Paul, we've just confirmed that Nick will have an opportunity to visit with the Chevy engineers during our session tomorrow with IndyCar. He'll catch up with them on pit road, and we'll get a better idea of exactly what changes Chevrolet is looking to make. So look forward to that for our first session tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern.
Well, if you remember, taking us back to the first race of the season at St. Pete, when Will Power lost one of his winglets, he could not pass. He could kind of catch up, but he said the difficulty when you lose the winglets is that you have difficulty passing, keeping the front end down when you're attempting to make a pass. So I'm guessing, even though they've come out without the winglets, that there's concern that you really can't run without those, and ask IndyCar to come up with an option to make it more viable. And so they've talked about tethers. Last week, as you may remember, they actually put thicker carbon fiber on the base of those little winglets where the vertical section goes up. But apparently that wasn't good enough. So now, if you knock one down, you're going to drag it with you, is what it sounds like. It doesn't matter. I'm guessing it's not much of a tether either. It's not like it's going to allow it to get any distance off of the wing at all, certainly not into the wheel. You know, we're talking pretty sharp stuff when we're talking carbon fiber.
The natural criticism, Paul, is to point the finger at them for being reactive about these issues. You should have known that wasn't going to work.
How could you know that
known that was going, and there's no way to know it. But I think for every instance in which it appears to the outsider that IndyCar has been reactive when it comes to safety, there are so many more areas in which this series has been proactive that many folks just absolutely are not aware of. I mean, that safety and innovation has been a hallmark of this series for a number of years, and I think it continues to be that. I have the pleasure of doing hospitality tours from time to time, and part of those hospitality tours for those sponsors and those guests, Paul, is to take them through our tech inspection area that travels with the series. And Paul, if the word safety comes out of the mouths of those guys once, it comes out of their mouths 50 times during that presentation, because that certainly comes first in the mind of the Verizon IndyCar Series, and not just for the drivers and the participants, but certainly the spectators as well.
You know, Mark, when you mentioned the safety in the Verizon IndyCar Series, one thing that's been newly implemented this year that is strictly one of the great benefits of the technological partnership, not just a sponsorship standpoint, between Verizon and the IndyCar Series is the following. The Homatro Safety Crew, which for those who are not aware, is a group of EMT and other workers predominantly from the Indianapolis area, but that have worked, of course, in this series and travel. It's the same group with every race. And, of course, you see those Homatro Safety Crew trucks throughout the course of the racetrack. The one thing that they now have in each of those cars, not only do they have, of course, the ability to listen to what's going on the racetrack via radios, but they also now have a live stream provided by Verizon that allows them to see live the action taking place on the racetrack, not only, of course, in the area where they are manning, but also where other trucks on the course may be manning should there be any need of assistance from somebody in one turn to have to move down to another. So that is just yet another example of the fact that, knock on wood, should there be an incident where a driver is in need of medical attention, that medical attention is, for all intents and purposes, designed to be there as soon as that driver comes to a stop. And that's all made possible further moving along with the advances in safety and keeping that in mind with that Verizon stream that they're able to watch live inside their Homatro Safety Crew trucks.
Well, so Verizon actually answered a question, gave a solution to something that's probably been 15 years in the works, because the Homatro Safety Team has always wanted some way to get some idea to know what they were rolling into. A place like this, Long Beach, it's a canyon. It's a concrete canyon, walls on both sides. You're sitting back. You don't have a chance to look down to the next corner if you're on one of those safety trucks, so that's going to be, I think, considerably
I'm proud to say
helpful.
that they've been listeners of ours for years.
Exactly, for that very same reason.
On the course, because they wanted to know exactly what was going on. And, of course, Mike Yates heads up that outstanding crew, and we had Mike on last year for the season finale at Fontana and really gave us tremendous insight as to how orchestrated that effort is when they arrive upon a scene, what each particular vehicle's responsibility is, and all the personnel's various responsibilities and whatnot. And we'll visit with Mike again before the season's over, no question.
We were talking about whether or not IndyCar was being reactive to what they did. I attended, as did a number of us, the first walkout of this new aero kit with Will Phillips and Tino Belli, the two that have the most work into this, and they said at that time, we think we've got it mostly good, but obviously there's going to be a little adjustment as we go through this season. And I was just impressed with the mere fact that everything, for the most part, fit right onto the car. Mm-hmm. Normally you do a little sawing, a little cutting, but for the most part, the new aero kits went on without any trouble whatsoever. I'm going to give you the rundown now, and we've got some new names running in that 108 category, and we have the top 10 all running in the 1 minute 8 second section. It's led by Dixon, and then, how about this, Saavedra, Hawksworth, Marco Andretti, Kimball, Coletti, Munoz, Bourdais, Newgarden, and Pagenaud. The top 10, that's the top 10, and they are all in the 1 minute 8 second range. So the practice number 2 is underway at Long Beach.
If there's one thing Firestone's learned over its 100 years in racing, it's that if you don't keep moving forward, you're going to get left behind. So even though Firestone has more Indy 500 wins than any other tire on the planet, we're always more concerned with what we've done for you lately. That's why we're constantly trying to make our tires stronger, last longer, and handle better than ever. And we bring that same commitment to every tire we make, whether it's for the racetrack or for the open road. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
And Scott Dixon just poked his nose into the 1 minute and 7 second range. The first one, and at this moment, the only one to accomplish that. Now, we make some assumptions, and we hope they're generally accurate. Of course, one of the great places that you can get the feeds is through the Indycar Race Control or the Verizon Indycar app. In both places, you have access to the streaming video and the live scoring. So we kind of depend on you getting most of the information there, but for those of you who don't, we try to give the rundown just any chance we can. Tony Kanaan has just moved up into 12th. Ryan Hunter-Reay moved into second. He is still in the 108 range. In fact, right now, we're talking a 0.5 of a second difference between number 1, Scott Dixon, and number 2, Ryan Hunter-Reay. Tony Kanaan working the circuit. And again,
TK's had a good day. I mean, Paul,
yeah.
he's got off to a good start this season, and we've talked about it a little bit again. I don't want to suggest that I'm lobbying to be part of the Tony Kanaan fan club, and I certainly don't want to jinx him, but TK is quietly getting, I think, his legs underneath him at Ganassi Racing.
Elio Castroneves just jumped to second place with a 1:08.25. Now it's a 3/10 interval between number 1 and number 2, number 1 being Dixon, 1:07.97. This is a 45-minute session, 13 minutes, 14 minutes right now. Clock just ticked over to 14 minutes, have gone down. And again, incident-free. The IndyCars have been running very efficiently. But Mark Jaynes, I got to tell you, I love the way they're able to pitch the cars here. I love to see the back ends come out and them control them with little opposite lock and throttle like Elio Castroneves just did. I mean, he probably jumped the back end 3 feet over, didn't he?
Yeah, there's certainly a way to fling that car around this racetrack, and most of them are early on seem to be on the ragged edge, Paul. There's no question.
And about everybody is doing it, which I think may be a testimonial to the fact that there's aspects of that aero kit that are working very, very well as Elio brings his number 3 onto Shoreline Drive, which is the front straightaway, even though it's not a straightaway, as Mark has pointed out. Most of the cars at this moment are actually in the pits on the track. Kanaan, Power, Montoya, and Castroneves, and Gabby Chavez. Those are the ones that are working on the racetrack at this moment, while everybody else is either making some adjustments to the car or talking over what it is that they want to do, and that's so typical of any IndyCar practice session.
Dixon, Elio, Hunter-Reay, Saavedra. I'll tell you what, Paul, he's
hanging in there.
He's feeling it a bit, huh? And that number 8 machine this weekend in for Sage Karam. That's going to be a shared ride. It was announced earlier this week by Ganassi Racing for he and Sage. Don't worry, Sage Karam fans. They confirmed this morning he'll be back at the car at Barber. So this is a cooperative effort. And good to see Gary Peterson back on pit road. Gary, of course, with AFS, he has long been associated with Sebastian Saavedra in both Indy Lights and the IndyCar series. And to show you how long Gary's been plying his trade, he drove his own AFS entry once upon a time in the old Menards Infinity Pro Series, Paul. So he's been around.
He goes
a bit.
back, you bet.
Good racing guy.
Guys on the track right now include Charlie Kimball, and we're getting a look at him as he makes that turn that takes him into turn 9, and he just brushes the wall with the left rear as he heads off for turn 10, which is the left-hander that brings us around to the hairpin that brings us onto the front straightaway. So Charlie Kimball continued on, though, and then he brought the car around, finally brought it into the pits, and doesn't seem too pleased with the fact that he has brushed the wall. Of course, even the lightest brush can knock the alignment totally out, and they're looking at that left rear wheel right now, trying to make a decision as to whether or not there's anything broken or anything running loose back there. And obviously, it's something you pay close attention to. Let's go down to Nick Yeoman.
Well, Tony Kanaan has brought that NTT data car back to pit lane. The rear engine cowling is off, and it looks like they're going to make some rear spring adjustments to adjust the downforce for that number 10 Chevrolet for Mr. Tony Kanaan. You guys talked about that hot start to the season that he has had. 3rd at St. Petersburg, 6th at NOLA. It's really, by and large, much better than anyone else that Target Chip Ganassi or Chip Ganassi Racing has done. Scott Dixon's gotten off to a rough start, 15th at St. Pete, 11th at NOLA. Charlie Kimball's had a rough start to the season, 21st and 14th in his first 2 starts. And then, as you guys talked about, Sage Karam certainly trying to learn. He had a 19th and an 18th so far to start this season. This really shouldn't be a surprise, though, that Tony Kanaan has been so quick out of the gate. They made an adjustment or a change at the top for his engineer. Chris Simmons moved over from Scott Dixon's car. He's the engineer for that car now. And Tony Kanaan closed the season so strong 1 year ago. 5 podium finishes in the final 7 races. Of course, that thrilling win at Fontana to end of the year. So that momentum, it's been a long off season. We've talked about it, 5 or 6 months, but that momentum has certainly carried over for Tony Kanaan. And he got to do a little sightseeing. He got into LA a couple days earlier than the rest of us. And Jake, he went to a filming of American Idol. I heard Tony did not jump on the mic and he didn't want to sing, and I think we're all probably better off for that. But Tony Kanaan enjoying a good start to the 2015 season.
Down here in the Dale Coyne pits, I'm watching as it looks like they're going to make a spring adjustment to that machine that belongs to Francesca Draconi. Now, one of the storylines that we saw take place in New Orleans, and the good news is everybody made it through okay, but a scary situation when the rookie came in and hydroplaned a bit, and it ended up making contact with one of the crew members. As a matter of fact, his crew chief, 40-year-old Todd Phillips of Wisconsin. Phillips fortunately was able, especially because he was wearing the helmet, to get away with strictly 6 stitches to his leg and some bruising. Now he did, speaking of Phillips, make the trip out here to Long Beach, California to kind of give it a go. They did not anticipate that he would be on the other side of the wall for this race, that he would wait to get that leg completely healed until Birmingham, and then in addition to that, at Birmingham, he would go on for the rest of the series. But what they decided once he came out here was that leg did start to swell. So Todd Phillips did leave today to return back home for the rest and relaxation, hoping to get back into Birmingham. That's not the only change within the Dale Coyne Racing team. The other news that really broke this morning is that of Rocky Moran Jr. now jumping into that second Dale Coyne Racing car. Carlos Huertas, as it was labeled as a, quote, business decision. I think we probably can read between the lines there, but Carlos Huertas, who won a race in Houston a year ago as a rookie in the Verizon IndyCar Series, is out. Rocky Moran Jr., who has experience in Atlantics, albeit a little over a decade ago, now is in. Nick Yeoman?
Love chatting with some of the other media members that cover the IndyCar Series. Bruce Martin is one of those for FoxSports.com. Bruce, 2 races in the books. What's been the theme or the biggest storyline that you've seen so far in the 2015 Verizon IndyCar season?
Well, I think the predominant theme has been the era of Aero, as they call it, the Aero kits. That continues to evolve race after race. Here at Long Beach, they've made some IndyCars, mandated some changes. The rabbit ears are gone off the Chevy kit until they can be strengthened. That won't happen this weekend, so the Chevy teams have all elected to take those things off so that they can strengthen them. And there's going to be a change to the rear of the Honda cars where they're going to make the Aero kits on that part of one package with the rear wing, so that it's to keep the parts and pieces from flying off and causing all these debris yellows that we've seen the first 2 races.
Certainly the race in St. Petersburg was a little disjointed as far as the guys we saw at the top. You know, Juan Montoya winning, Will Power, not a big surprise there. At New Orleans, though, what did you think of that race? I mean, that seemed like about as unconventional as you're ever going to get with James Hinchcliffe winning on one stop.
Especially when the best racing of the day was on the wet. 16 laps they were able to run on the rain tires, not a problem. As soon as they put the dry tires on, they couldn't run more than 2 laps at a time. I believe from lap 19 all the way to the end of the race to lap 47, there was a total of only 6 green flag laps, none of those more than 2 at a time.
Give me a couple names you're keeping an eye on that we may see victory lane here at Long Beach. Of course, this in the last couple of years, this has been a wild card race. You could throw about 20 names, it seems like, in the mix for the win.
Well, it certainly is, but I also think this is kind of the time where Simon Pagenaud needs to show why he got hired at Team Penske. When you think about the expectations that have been placed on him this year, a 5th place finish is a pretty good finish at St. Pete, but Team Penske has a lot higher expectations out of Simon Pagenaud than that. I expect to see him being one of the guys to battle it out with Will Power on Sunday for the victory.
Chatting with Bruce Martin, FoxSports.com. Bruce, give us your Twitter handle. What are you going to be covering? Where we can read your stuff?
It's at Bruce Martin _500. You can find my stuff at foxsports.com and some things on nationalspeedsportnews.com. And every Sunday morning on 250 Fox Sports radio stations, I'm on Race Day on Fox Sports Radio with the Verizon IndyCar Series report.
He's one of the good ones, so we'll get good catch up with Bruce Martin and many of our media types down here covering the series. And Paul, I understand we've gone red on the racetrack.
Red just came out. Incident over in turn 1. 2 cars involved. The one has its back to us. You have any idea who this blue and white car is?
That's
here?
the
It looks
18
like the 18 car, doesn't
That's
it?
Rocky Moran Jr. We're getting a look at the replay right now, Paul. They're coming down the straightaway and turning towards turn 1, and that's inexperience right there. I don't know necessarily. I don't want to point an unnecessary finger at the driver of the 26 machine. That, of course, is Carlos Munoz. But Paul, part of this deal, I think, and I've heard our driver analysts say this in the past, part of this deal is knowing who you're racing and where you're racing them. And I don't know that, given the conditions in practice, that was the best place for Carlos Munoz to tick his nose in under Rocky Moran Jr., a guy that is clearly taking his first laps under the brief test with Schmidt several months ago.
Well, the point's well taken there. And add to it, it's a practice after all.
Sure.
You don't need positions.
You're not racing
you need
for
clean
position,
laps.
right.
Yeah. So Rocky is sitting in the car still, and the Homatro safety team is there in turn 1. He did back it into the wall, though. There's obvious damage to the rear wing and to the left rear of the car. And so they're going to have to do some cleanup. They're going to have to get him so they can get him back into the pits and bring him back to his team so they know what it is that they can do. At the same time, there was an indication that there was some debris over in turn 11. That's the hairpin that leads on to Shoreline here. And so as a result of that, they put a standing yellow out there going into 11, but they decided since the debris was offline, they would keep running. And now with the track down, that's going to get cleaned up as well. So the safety team has Rocky Moran. They're going to take him for just a cursory visit with a doctor, and we're going to have some time here to catch up. In fact, they just took that piece we were talking about. They've gotten it and one other piece. They've been running off on the corner workers here. And, of course, we're talking at this race a lot of SCCA corner workers with a great deal of experience. And they do a super job here. And you can't run these races without that kind of volunteer help.
Speeds didn't look to be that high upon impact, Paul, because, again, it was at the end of the straightaway going into turn 1, and by design they're going to be in a low gear there, and they're going to be on the binders a little bit. But there obviously was noticeable contact between the two, and I don't think, I hope anyway, that's not going to be a lengthy repair. The 26 machine is on pit road now. And they're giving it a look-see to see what sort of...
I didn't see him touch anything, though. He just lost the car after Moran got alongside him.
Yeah.
So that brings us into this red flag session. There is a kind of an interesting thing that I noticed. We're red flag, so it's red flag of whatever corners are capable of displaying that. But down in turn 1, the approach to turn 1, I'm not sure the entire word got out or they're just being extra careful, but... they're waving the white, waving the course condition flag, and waving the yellow. And then on the other side of the course, they're waving a yellow. So even though everybody is in the pits, I don't think they want to take any chance whatsoever. Actually, the contact, we just had another look at Rocky Moran's incident, and there was a bit of contact with the 26 car of Munoz.
Yeah.
And doesn't look like it was heavy contact, but things don't necessarily look heavy that are also very serious issues.
Nick Yeoman?
Yeah, you are exactly right, Paul Page. The 26 car, Carlos Munoz, he brought that machine back to pit lane, and they did have to change the front wing on the right side, kind of the upright razor blade type formations on this Honda Aero kit. One of those had been sheared off, and actually the entire structure is loose and banging back and forth. So they went ahead and changed the front wing assembly for Carlos Munoz. The rest of the car, though, honestly looks okay. So it looks like it was just a simple bolt off, bolt back on, and Carlos Munoz should be able to continue practicing here momentarily.
At the same time, down in turn 1, whatever was wrong with Rocky Moran's car after the accident, the safety team made a decision to actually actually pick that car up on the hook and bring it back rather than to try to get it either flat-towed or driven back by Rocky Moran. It's got to be a disappointment for that guy.
Oh, sure, absolutely, it's a disappointment. That's that's. Yeah, we're taking a look right now at the video, and it looks like Rocky Moran is back on pit road. We see Munoz coming to the inside. Moran is plenty high going down the straightaway, getting ready to make the entrance, and I just don't. He just didn't see him there, Paul. And the contact came left rear to right front, and the
cars were side by side though.
Got Munoz up on the curbing a little bit. He kicked a couple of cones out of the way, and Rocky Moran now visiting with his engineers as we speak.
So we continue to be under the red flag. 27 minutes of the overall session time is complete. We've had the red flag out for 5 minutes and 45 seconds.
If there's one thing Firestone's learned over its 100 years in racing, it's that if you don't keep moving forward, you're going to get left behind. So even though Firestone has more Indy 500 wins than any other tire on the planet, we're always more concerned with what we've done for you lately. That's why we're constantly trying to make our tires stronger, last longer, and handle better than ever. And we bring that same commitment to every tire we make, whether it's for the racetrack or for the open road. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
We're back to practice. The green flag came out right away. The Penske cars answered it. In order, it was Montoya and then Power, but then Tony Kanaan jumped into the third place as they rolled out of the pits. And once again, every time we see them go through one of these right-angle corners here, they are pitching the car a great deal. Tony Kanaan just did that, and it was surprising, again, how far off straight they are able to get these cars and recover.
Dixon, Power, Castro Neves, Hunter Ray, and Montoya, your top five. Saavedra, Newgarden, Kanaan, Hawksworth, and Bourdais, the top 10. Red flag situation brought out after the two-car contact between Munoz and Rocky Moran. Nick Yeoman, let's get one side of what happened there.
Yeah, of course, it's a big weekend for the 34-year-old California, making his Indycar debut. Walk us through what happened out there in turn one.
Yeah, I mean, I basically turned into the corner, and I didn't know Munoz was there. I just didn't know he was there. This is my first IndyCar race, so I've got a lot going on, and I'm just focusing on not driving in my mirrors, holding my racing line. I watched the video, and he was trying to slow down, but by the time we got to the apex, his right front was at my left rear, and it just kicked out the back of the car, and unfortunately the car tapped the wall. So, I jammed my thumb a little bit, which sucks, but I think that the damage is light enough to where they can repair and we can be back tomorrow.
Still, though, I would assume it's still got to be hard to hide the smile for this opportunity, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, obviously I'm bummed that happened, but just to be here, it's the coolest thing of all time. I owe Dale Coyne a big thank you. I'm sure they'll get the car going, and we'll be back out tomorrow, and we'll continue to improve. For me right now, it's all about laps and seat time.
I know you tested a car for Sam Schmidt Racing last year. How did this whole deal with Dale Coyne come together?
Dale's been a guy. Dale actually gave me my first IndyCar test way back in 2002. So we've had a relationship going back, 12 years, and we've talked over the years. He's known that I wanted to do something with them, and this seat opened up really very last minute. I found out at 4:30 yesterday. So fortunately, I live close by, and I already had a seat from Schmidt, and we were able to come down here and pull it off.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
That is Rocky Moran Jr. making his IndyCar debut. Paul, not a very good start to this session, but certainly a great opportunity for that American driver.
Well, and he said it. Yeah, he's trying to make his debut here in the Verizon IndyCars. He's doing it at a track that is particularly difficult. And as he said, there's a lot going on in the car. To pick up the methodology of driving one of these cars is not necessarily an easy thing. It's different than almost everything else you would drive, being at the pinnacle of American open wheel racing. So putting that car on this track, I guess Southern California being his home, it makes good sense. But on the other hand, putting somebody on this track that is nothing but concrete walls all the way around is a different kind of decision.
I'm just blown away at the fact that the deal didn't come together for him. He didn't got a phone call essentially out of the blue at 4:30 yesterday. Paul, if that is not last minute, I don't know what would be.
Oh, I was surprised. heard that they were trying to fit him into a seat in the car as darkness started to fall on the track. And we wondered, was that official or was it just something they were looking forward to as a possibility? And then the word came out, it is official. Rocky Moran, of course, his father, an IndyCar driver as well.
He brought up something interesting, Paul, during the closing stages of that interview that shows you, again, how much things have changed over the years. Once upon a time, a driver looking for a ride could make his way through the paddock with only his helmet in hand. Now he needs a seat, too. That's how specialized the cockpit is in terms of how the drivers are fitted to them. So he happened to have his seat, as you heard him say, that he used during the test for Schmidt.
Yeah, but, that's one of the interesting things about the new Indy Lights car, isn't it? That you can pick that seat right out of there and go into an Indy car. And making the seat is not like a simple little thing.
No, it's not.
You have to sit in a big bag of chemical and get the whole thing arranged, and then it has to be cut and trimmed. And the fact that Beach could pick his seat up and go get an IndyCar ride if it became available is very helpful.
Sure. Dixon, Power, Castroneves, Hunter Ray, and Newgarden. That quick speed, by the way, is 104.022. Actually, 104.239 is the quick speed for Dixon. As we mentioned, Montoya. Now, Pagano goes to P2, bumping Montoya, Power, and Elio down to fifth. We talk about after that first session a little bit earlier on today, wondering where the strength was from Roger Penske's operation. Apparently it has returned. While they are looking up at Dixon right now, you talk about what impact, if any, aero kits and the redesign and the adjustments to the aero kits might be having, Paul. 5 of the top 6 belong to Chevrolet, and that includes positions 1 through 5. Honda, the fastest Honda, Ryan Hunter-Ray, P6 at 103. 108.20.
Yeah, one of the scoring monitors is one of the bits that bites, not necessarily talking to each other, so that's why Mark read off some of those times he did. We'll actually give you, it's the, now we're, here we go, 107.9, that is Dixon, 107.99, well, that Power just went around him. I hate that when they do that.
Yeah, as we say it,
couldn't
it
they not wait
now,
until we're done?
Now, Pagano, you looked at me, and Pagano goes back to P1.
So the Penske team's figuring that thing out. Pagano, Power, Dixon, Montoya, Castroneves, Ryan Hunter-Ray, Joseph Newgarden, Graham Rahal, Sebastian Saavedra, who is back, and Tony Kanaan. That is your top 10. And the top 10 branches from 107.82, that's Pagano's quick time, all the way down to a 108.63. So there is a spread developing there, but I'm sure that's going to be closed up about the time that we go to qualifying tomorrow afternoon. And again, it's that great qualifying, which is a rather constant elimination.
That number 2 machine of Juan Montoya has come back here onto pit road, and they take a look at it, check the balance on the front of the car. Now they're going to take the rear cowling off, but obviously I think for the most part they would have to be pleased with what they're seeing in that number 2 machine of Juan Montoya. Now he is on pit out. Juan Montoya, he is the very first pit stall at the end of pit road, but it's the end of pit road for the Verizon IndyCar Series. It is still a lengthy jaunt before they actually blend back into the straightaway here, and the reason for that is because in addition to the Verizon IndyCar Series this weekend, you have, of course, the Pirelli World Challenge, and their pit stalls go about another 18 or 20 stalls or so in front of where Montoya's would be. Of course, nobody will be on pit road during the course of the race, but once he clears out, he'll have smooth track ahead of him on pit road here, if you will, before he has to blend in. But nonetheless, it's a fairly lengthy ride at that pit speed limit before any driver can blend back in about 800 or 900 yards prior to turn number 1. Nick?
And Jake, I think most drivers will tell you this is one of the most difficult pit lanes in all the sport. You know, we talk about the important figures for a team, certainly the driver, the engineer, the strategist, but I think here at Long Beach, more than any race, I think that left front tire changer who stands up and cues the driver to leave the pit stall after the car is completely filled plays a very important role here at Long Beach, because as you mentioned, with the curving nature of this pit lane, we've seen incidents plenty of times over the years. Paul, you've seen them as well. This is one of the more difficult pit lanes, and certainly for the drivers, it's not as simple has just hit the throttle, accelerate, and move to the left because you got a lot to worry about here at pit lane.
Now, if it were simple, then all of us could do it. It's definitely not simple. In fact, they run the Toyota Celebrity Race here. That'll happen on the middle of the day tomorrow on Saturday. And they start the professionals. They mix celebrities in the front and then professionals in the back, but they start the professionals 30 seconds after the celebs go. And usually within a lap or two, here come the professionals cutting right through that field. Anytime you think, we used to say, any kid on the fence thinks he can beat A.J. Foyt. And that's right up until you get in a race car. And then suddenly, wow, this is not as easy. I thought I could drive fast laps. I can drive 3, but then I fatigue. I lose my focus. And I've never driven alongside of somebody. Maybe you had to rethink this whole idea and become an accountant.
Our network director, Wally Levitt, keeps us in contact with race control on a regular basis during these shows. But in addition to that, he just pointed out on timing and scoring, if you start at Kanaan in the 11th position, he's at 108.63. Then Jakes is 108.64. Bourdais at 108.64. Kimball at 108.65. And Coletti at 108.66.
Yeah, and for a while there was a whole group just came right down the line, separated by hundreds. Wally Levitt, again, our general manager. Most general managers would be in a very plush office with curtains and monitors and a big desk.
Well, he gets confused.
Now Wally, he
gets
up here and takes a look at it all.
Yeah.
So this practice session number 2 for the Verizon Indycars, has now 38 minutes into the record book. 5 minutes and 55 seconds of that were spent under the red flag for that incident down in turn 1 with Rocky Moran. Everything cleaned up. Everything appears good for him, as well as Carlos Munoz, the other car involved. And it doesn't appear that the damage is so severe on either car that there would have been an issue. Might be an overnight repair for Rocky Moran's car, but as he said, you heard him say that pretty good chance that car is going to be ready to go first thing in the morning. Mark James, you and I were looking. There's Seaside is a straightaway that runs into turn 9, which is a right-hand turn, right angle, and it's pretty critical because it leaves you to a sweeping left-hander that leads you to the hairpin, comes on the front straightaway. It's important for a couple reasons. One, it's a passing area. It's probably the best passing area on this track, and also getting that one right so that you get the next one right gets you to the hairpin, and if you get that right, you're going to carry the little extra speed. Say you get a 2-mile-an-hour advantage coming through that turn, you can carry that advantage all the way down the front straightaway, and it just continues to climb. So that's why those are pretty critical. But we saw a bump. We saw Saavedra go over it, and there's a bump there. It may also be that the car mechanical traction is not set up as the best it can be. I don't want to say that because I don't know that, but I want to hint at it. But the car, it looked like it hit a whole series of potholes when he came into the corner and hit on the brakes.
Yeah, it looked like the front wheels almost came off of the ground, Paul, and that has a tendency. I'm not an engineer, but that might affect the grip just a little bit when you're going into that turn. But also, as you go down Seaside Way and start to set up for turn number 9, Paul, there's a pretty pronounced manhole cover to the high side in preparation for that turn that you need to be mindful of, too. And again, all of these, which we talked to Indy Lights driver Zach Veach about when he joined us for the Indy Lights, all of those things are factors that the drivers have to be prepared for. We ask him little things like, can you really tell the difference in the surfaces when you run across them, from asphalt to concrete and different types of asphalt? And he said, yeah, no question. He said, you feel it, and he said, you learn, or should anyway, what you can and can't do and where pretty quickly throughout the course of that first session.
So many changing surfaces here because it is, after all, a city street. Asphalt, concrete, some repair patches. There is very definitely a concrete patch over on driver's left coming into turn 9, and it is a bit of a bump. I'm not sure. I would want to go out there and take a look at it because it seems to affect them just a little bit more now here in the afternoon practice session.
Yeah, and you certainly, that high side is the preferred line because, you want to get to the bottom of that turn in preparation for it, and your momentum is going to carry you out wide because if you start down low, the breaking point's almost impossible, Paul, and your momentum would just carry it either into the car to the high side or carry into the tire barriers. I've been, as I said, for a number of years, we were out there overlooking that very turn, and I can tell you, I was amazed at the times that drivers were able to go through there too wide. Didn't always work, but more often than not, they trusted one another enough and lifted enough to keep the car under control to be able to go through there too wide. They might have been leaning on their Firestone Firehawks and the sidewalls a little bit to get that done, but it still happened nonetheless.
41 minutes, 45 seconds now complete in this session. 5:55 of those were red. Now, we never get a chance to talk about this. When you're out in your position, you're doing the race, you're busy, but I can't imagine how really neat that must be to be right there so close to the track where you can look right down on, you can see into the cockpit and everything.
Oh, yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, most places we go, Paul, you can indeed see down into the cockpit, and it's always cool as part of the pre-race festivities when the drivers come around. Every now and then they'll notice us up on a perch and they'll give us the thumbs up, and our good friends from the Montrose safety crews, we see Ryan Hunter-Reay off of turn number 8 get into the outside retaining wall. He slapped the left side, especially that left rear, and that wound him up plenty. But yeah, Paul, being out there among the spectators and the look on their faces when they walk by and sometimes see us 40 feet up in the air. But yeah, the views more often than not are spectacular. I used to be in a turn 3 perch at Milwaukee, but I think that it was built at the turn of the 19th century, so now I do it from the top of the grandstand at Milwaukee, which still gives me a great view. The old Nashville Super Speedway, I say old, I should say former, the perch that they had set up there, as you suggest, gave me a view literally into the cockpit when they went by. So yeah, it's a pretty cool experience.
We're in the final 2 minutes of this session. We get paid to come to races. Don't tell anybody, but
that's right.
We'd probably be doing it for free.
We've got them fooled at home. You shouldn't say that with that guy sitting next to you.
Yeah, exactly. That was a mistake. I'm going to pay for that, I'm sure. We're talking about the general manager sitting right here who decides what all of us are getting paid. So, the order as it is right now, coming into the final minute and a half of this session, and they've stayed pretty static for some time, is Power at 107.55, followed by Pagno 107.59, Castroneves 107.95, Dixon 107.97. Montoya starts the 108s, 108.05, followed by Rahal, Bourdais, Newgarden, Hunter-Reay, and Marco Andretti. That's the top 10 right now. Marco Andretti, to give you a comparison to the fastest car, is a 108.31. The fastest is a 107.55.
Some of the folks at the bottom of timing and scoring, Jack Hawksworth ran pretty well earlier today. Both he and his teammate Takuma Sato are in the bottom 3 or 4. They're 20th and 21st, respectively. Felipe is 19th quick. Kimball is 18th quick. Then James Jakes. Gabby Chavez is 16th quick. Munoz is 15th quick. And I think all in all, Paul, you got to pat Saavedra on the back a little bit. First venture into this car for Sebastian. And he has turned some pretty good laps here today. Just got bumped down to 15th, and for a while he was running solidly in the top 10.
Yeah, Hawksworth just eclipsed the speed of our most recent winner, James Hinchcliffe, and Hawksworth is now 11th. We're coming up, counting the final 3 seconds of this practice session. They get one more tomorrow morning, and there's the checkered flag. The session is going to come to an end. They're going to get into the pits and have those conversations, and the crews are then going to do their work and prepare these cars for the practice session tomorrow.
We mentioned that Saavedra and Karam will be sharing that number 8 ride as we see a car has spun. That's Felipe. He is stalled in the runoff in turn 1, so they'll get Luca back underway. They'll quick jack him and get him underway. Rocky Moran Jr., as we mentioned, in for Carlos Huertas at Dale Coyne Racing. The driver that we have not seen, Paul, is Simona Di Silvestro, and we talked to Michael Andretti in the last session, and could not get things put together financially for Simona. They continue to make that a work in progress and hope they can have her back in the car at Barber. But Michael is committed to Simona in the month of May.
Just saw something interesting. I think most of the diehard fans know that every time a car comes in the pits, almost all the teams try to practice a pit stop when they do that. Will Power just came in, they practiced a pit stop, and then they practiced a rear wing change. They got that done, and then they practiced another pit stop. You want to ask why Penske's operation is so good? It's because that attention to detail. Just that kind of stuff right there.
It's like a golfer spending an hour and a half, 2 hours practicing the same shot out of the sand, Paul. I mean, those are the little details, I think, that help separate that team from some of the others, no question.
I wouldn't know what that is. I do not have the temperament for that sport. I'm a little more ballistic, I think, than that. So they're going to get Felipe back. No harm, no foul. He didn't touch anything when he went into that runoff at turn one. It's just a matter of getting him started again and getting him back to his pit area and eventually back to his paddock area. So what do we expect when we come back on Saturday? The IndyCar series will practice at 1 o'clock. That's Eastern time, 1 o'clock Eastern, and the Indy Lights will be up at 12:15. How about Saavedra, though? We're talking a very cool guy who's done well, Nick.
That's right, Paul. And he ran in the top 10 the most of the session. I think slipped to 16th right there at the end, but pretty good running out there. Glad to see you back in a race car. Great opportunity with Chip Ganassi Racing. How is that number 8 car for you?
Man, it's good to be back, to be honest. I think it's an awesome opportunity for all of us on board. Getting a little bit of the rust out of my body, but so far feeling good, AFS racing car, big machine, Comfort Revolution car is looking good. Just taking one step at a time.
How about this racetrack? I mean, this is always such a lot of wild cards. We've seen surprise winners. How tough is it maneuvering this course, especially for the course of an entire race?
Wow, it's from what I've seen from the last couple of races, it's going to be pretty fun. It's definitely a survival mode from beginning to end, trying to be as clean as possible. But it's such high, I would say, competition out there that everybody just within tenths, that you cannot do any mistakes or you're out. So it's definitely going to be fun to watch and, of course, to be inside the race.
All right, good to see you back. That is Sebastian Saavedra. He ends up 16th in this practice session, but what an opportunity to drive a car for Chip Ganassi, Paul.
Thanks, Nick. We'll run this again for you. Lights practice at 12:15. That's Eastern time tomorrow. IndyCar practice at 1 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. Then the Lights will qualify at 3:55 Saturday afternoon. IndyCar qualifying comes up at 4:55. Those times are all Eastern times. If you're out here on the left coast, subtract 3 hours from that, and you might be pretty close to the time you ought to be at this facility. And when you come to this facility, I mean, spend some time, walk around, take a look at everything that's going on, the Lifestyle Expo here, and the opportunity to get down where the cars are, to go to the Hospitality Row, to spend time with drivers in their autograph session. It's a very special place to be. They do most of that at every track, but for some reason there's an ambiance here.
Well, I mean, it's 40 years plus in the making, Paul, this history and tradition. Those sorts of things don't happen overnight, and this is an outstanding venue, and it's just supported each and every year, not only from a corporate structure, but certainly the fans. And if it weren't for the fans, it wouldn't have made it all these years, Paul.
Jake, with a 1:07.59, Simon Pagenaud comes in second in the overall times. What is he thinking?
Yeah, Scott Dixon is the only interloper in that quartet of cars from Roger Penske's paddock that make their way here in the top 5. Simon Pagenaud second fastest. Obviously, you guys seem to have things figured out here in Long Beach. How was that Penske truck rental machine?
It's fantastic. It's been fantastic since the beginning of the season. It's great. This place is fantastic here in Long Beach. It's definitely our Monaco of IndyCar. So having a good time. The car is fast. The car is really good. It's just working on your details here and there, and all 4 of us are just working really well together at feeding each other with information. So throughout the session, you see us improving really well.
The one thing about here, Simon, we know the weather is going to be consistent pretty much any session over the course of the weekend. How much does that allow you to kind of play with things, knowing that you don't necessarily have to plan for anything other than probably 75 and sunny?
That's right. That's nice, actually. It's good for the engineers, too, on the level of downforce they can run. The tricky part here is actually what kind of air level you want to run at in qualifying with that long straight, and how much you want to have in the race, considering tire wear. So it's interesting. It's an interesting weekend, like you said. Conditions are stable, so that's a good thing that helps us with the whole team Penske to get ready for qualifying tomorrow.
Obviously, lastly, with no disrespect to your former team, because I know you got along with them great, you had a great relationship with them, but have you already started to see really the payoff of being able to have not one, not two, but three different teammates and engineers to bounce things off of.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people are saying that it's not fair what's happening with Team Penske, but quite frankly, the drivers were just working so well together in terms of extracting the best out of ourselves. And then the engineers are doing the same with the car, so it's just a really good dynamic. I had a great time last year with Schmidt, and the 3 years I had with them was fantastic. That's what got me the ride here with Team Penske, so I'm just very thankful for the opportunity I got with Sam. And, it's time now to have a good time here with Team Penske.
Good luck this weekend, and as always, be safe.
Thank you, Jake.
Simon Pagano, guys.
The streets of Long Beach are quiet for the moment, but there's still other forms of racing that will be on here, including drifting, like at 7 o'clock tonight out here in Long Beach. But the Verizon Indy cars are done until tomorrow morning, so I'm Paul Page for Mark James, Jake Query, and Nick Yeoman. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
Indycar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his fourth 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment.
And we await A.J. Foyt along with a host of others, including Tony Holman, who is cheering as loudly as the crowd. We've seen what has never been seen before, beginning with a woman driving in the field in the morning and A.J. finishing 4 up front at Indianapolis. Headed into victory lane now, A.J. Foyt and the gleaming Gilmore 14 Coyote, the Gilmore Racing Team, home, and he wins again.
And there's the check flag for Mark Donahue, winner of the 1972 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Oh my goodness, we have 7, 8, 10 cars in a pack headed for one Jerry.
Well, you talk about the crowd getting on their feet. They do. So far, so good. They are nose to tail, a little bit of room. There's about an 8-car pack in front of Gary Lee right now.
Yeah, and in that pack, second place and third place. Little Al has gotten around Jack Villeneuve. He's back up to second, and now 2 cars separate second and third. Mr. Excitement is that youngster, that second-generation driver. We're impressed with Jack Villeneuve, but right now he's dropped to third. And there's Al Unser Jr., and then Bobby Rahal. Jack Villeneuve goes on the outside. He